I'll now call to order our hybrid meeting of the Natural Resources Board. We'll have participants and presenters both in person and online today. And I've got a few reminders and some introductory comments before we go on to the agenda. Please turn off your phones and other devices that may interrupt the meeting. And now that the music is down, please minimize the background noise. Participants online, please make sure you're muted and your video is turned off until your item is announced. And note there's sometimes a delay in the broadcast and it's very easy for us to talk over one another. So we'll have to be cautious of that. Our board meetings are also televised live via YouTube, and I welcome and thank all viewers that are tuning in today. And for those people that can't make it, the records of past meetings are available for review on the DNR website under Natural Resources Board Briefs of Action. Direct public involvement and open, transparent meetings are the foundation of how this board has operated for over 50 years, and it's how we strive to operate today. Our board meeting discussions and decision-making are transparent to all, and public testimony is welcome at every regularly scheduled board meeting. And we want to ensure fair and equal time for all, so we limit each testimony to 3 minutes per speaker. We have our light system here as a reminder, and when the lights are green, you're on, and when they're yellow, you're getting close to the end, and when it hits red, please bring your comments to a close. I know that's difficult for some people to say everything they would like to and present all the information, but you have the option to present written materials to the board as well as some of the backup information or some of the more technical details that you don't have time for in your 3 minutes. I would also like to thank Deputy Secretary Stephen Little and your leadership team for your support of the board and your commitment to enhance collaboration between the department, the board, and the citizens that we serve. Thanks to our issue presenters, DNR Information Technology, the Office of Communications, and General Counsel, and all the support staff that make these meetings possible. Your time is valuable, and we very much appreciate your support. I'd like to individually recognize Ashley Bistel and welcome Ashley back. Ashley's been on family leave for several months, and it's great to have her back. She is your primary contact for all interaction with the board, communications and information. And lastly, I'd like to thank all the employees, citizen volunteers, and conservation partners of the Department of Natural Resources and the board for your commitment and tireless work to protect and enhance our natural resources and to serve all citizens of our great state. Board members, any questions or comments? Hearing none, Ashley, please call the roll.
Deb Dassel.
Present.
Patty Schaffner.
Present.
Robin Schmidt.
Present.
Marcy West.
Present.
Rachel Baresa.
Present.
Douglas Cox.
Present.
And Bill Smith.
Present. And as everybody noted, Patty Schachner's with us today online. So you'll hear Patty and maybe even see her on the camera. I do. Welcome, Patty. Just so you're aware, it's cold and snowing and blowing down here too. So we're all sharing in that.
Yeah.
Okay, we'll move on to the, I should recognize also that we do have a quorum today and we can go ahead with business. So we'll move on to the Secretary's remarks. Deputy Secretary Little.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Good morning, everyone. Just a few quick remarks. Number one, I too want to welcome back Ashley Bistel from her family leave. And I also want to offer thanks to Holly Lamers, to Stephanie Babel, to Zoe Hayes, and to Katie Majewski for their work in supporting the board in Ashley's absence. The second remark that I'd like to make would just be to share with you all, if you haven't heard already, that on the 23rd of December, Governor Evers announced that Dr. Karen Yun will serve as the next secretary for the Department of Natural Resources. Dr. Yun brings extensive working experience in natural resources stewardship and conservation issues. She currently is completing her tour of service as the Chief of Staff at the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. And in addition to her executive level experience, she also has experience in congressional policy work and natural resources nonprofit experience. Secretary will begin her work as her appointment will begin on January 27th. And we are certainly looking forward to working with her and welcome her to the Department of Natural Resources. Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. We'll move on to item 1C, approval of the agenda for January 22nd, 2025. Are there any changes to the agenda? Hearing none, it'd be appropriate for a motion to approve the January agenda.
So moved, Chair.
Got a motion to approve from Doug. Is there a second?
A second.
Second from Rachel. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. We have an agenda. We'll move on to item 2 on the agenda, the consent agenda. Item 2A, approval of brief of action from December 11th, 2024. Item 2B, acknowledgement of a donation. The Natural Resources Foundation of Wisconsin donated $61,260 to the Bureaus of Natural Heritage Conservation and Wildlife Management through the Cherish Wisconsin Outdoors Fund. Within that overall donation, $25,260 will go to the Spread Eagle Barrens State Natural Area, $15,000 for the Northern Highlands American Legion State Forest, and $21,000 for the Lodi Marsh Wildlife Area. Item 2C, request approval of department recommendations for the prohibition of hunting and trapping to protect public safety on land to be purchased with Knowles Nelson Stewardship Funds at the Village of McWanaco, Waukesha County. Item 2D, request approval of department recommendations for the prohibition of hunting and trapping to protect public safety on land to be purchased with Knowles Nelson Stewardship Grant Assistance, Crossroads at Big Creek, Door County. And item 2E, request approval of department recommendations for the prohibition of gun hunting and a limitation on types of trapping to protect public safety on land to be purchased with Knowles Nelson Stewardship Grant Assistance, City of Platteville, Grant County. Item 2F, request that the board authorize a preliminary public hearing and comment period for the statement of scope for Board Order WA 14-24, proposed rules affecting chapters NR 157 and 526 related to the non-landfill management of solid waste. And item 2G, request the board authorize a preliminary public hearing and comment period for the statement of scope for Board Order FH 21-24 for proposed rules affecting chapters NR 20 and 25 related to establishing a Lake Michigan lake trout commercial harvest. I'd like to get a motion, please.
I move approval of the consent calendar.
Got a motion to approve from Robin. Is there a second?
Second.
Deb seconds. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries. The consent agenda is approved. We have no items under item 3. We'll move on to item 4, action items. Item 4A, request adoption of Board Order FH-20-24, proposed rule appealing NR 20.05, paragraph 2, related to fishing while in possession of a firearm. Kari Lee Zimmerman, Policy and Regulation Specialist, Bureaus of Fisheries Management. Welcome, Kari.
Morning, Board. Secretary, Deputy Secretary Little, Chair Smith, members of the board. I'm Kari Lee Zimmerman with the Bureau of Fisheries, and it's good to be back after a nice holiday break. I'm here today on behalf of Fisheries, presenting FH 2024, and we are at the final stage of this rule. Then we're looking for adoption. So NR 20.05 sub 2 prohibits a person from possessing or controlling a firearm, gun, or any similar device that could be used for fishing while they're on the waters, banks, or shores of the state. And this has been in effect for many, many years. However, the DNR has determined that there's been a change in circumstances, and since the provision was first enacted, as a result, it is now in conflict with state law. So we previously requested JCRAR suspend NR 20.05 sub 2, and they have done so. They have granted that to us while we proceed with this permanent rulemaking process to repeal that. And I just wanted to note that since it's been in conflict with state law, it has not been enforced by the department. It's just sort of been on the books, and we're just trying to clean that up now. And if the rule is repealed, fish would remain protected from firearm harvest under NR 20.051 of Administrative Code, which generally prohibits the taking of fish by means other than hook and line, except as specifically authorized. And so with that, if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
Thank you, Kari. Are there any, we have no speakers on it. Are there questions from the board? Okay, thank you. Can we have a motion, please?
I'll go ahead and move approval.
We have a motion to approve from Robin. Is there a second?
Second.
Second from Rachel. Any comments, questions? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you, Kari. Okay, item 4B. Request the board adopt WA-11-22 proposed rules affecting chapters NR 500 to 524 related to landfills, solid waste management fees, financial responsibility, and reporting requirements. Kate Strom-Heorns, Waste and Materials Management Program Director.
Good morning, Chair Smith.
Welcome,
and
Kate.
Board members, and good morning, Deputy Secretary Little. As you said, I'm Kate Strom-Heorns, the Director of the Waste and Materials Management Program, and I'm here this morning to ask for your approval of WA 11-22. And this proposed rule amends portions of NR 500 to 524 Wisconsin Administrative Code. It incorporates changes to solid waste landfill requirements, solid waste management fees, financial responsibility, and reporting requirements. The proposed rule reflects current industry standards and experience gained over the last 30 years related to design, construction, and operation of landfills, while also continuing to protect public health and the environment. This is the first major update of solid waste landfill regulations and fees since 2006. And rulemaking was initiated by our external partners and stakeholders. We have a waste and materials management study group that serves as an advisory group to our program. And they had some suggestions over the past several years. And we also had some proposals from individual landfill owners, and we wanted to make those changes through a rulemaking process rather than just individual or approvals around the state. This rule does impact both municipal solid waste or MSW landfills and industrial landfills. Those MSW landfills take a mix of household and commercial waste, and industrial landfills typically take one type of waste, which might be combustion ash or paper mill sludge or foundry sand. But both of these types of landfills do have to meet certain engineering design requirements and operational requirements that are in code. And we currently have a total of 58 active MSW and industrial landfills in the state. So there is a lot in this rule, including changes for clarity and consistency, and some things that do allow new options, such as an alternative liner and alternative cover or capping design options. We've standardized certain things in code that were typically in just plans of operation individually. Now they'll be standardized, such as annual report requirements and long-term care requirements that are required for landfills in perpetuity. And we updated information to determine landfill location feasibility and made some clarifications there. So these changes, among many others in the rule, were made to ensure that they are at least or more protective than the federal regulations, and that they continue to protect our state's groundwater. They have effective monitoring and collection of leachate and landfill gas, and that steps are in place to correct any contamination or mismanagement of landfill operations. I think I didn't go forward before anyway, so I'll put another one forward. So this rule also contains a proposal to adjust fees that the DNR can charge to review design plans and inspect the construction and operation of landfills. And also shown on the slide, the rule adjusts one fee that is charged per ton of waste disposed at a landfill. So these fees, as I noted, have not been changed since 2006. And by making these adjustments, we plan to improve our customer service, including quicker response times with additional staff, some IT development and file digitization for streamlined processes and easier public access to files and site maps. And overall, we hope to help ensure that to ensure the safe management of waste for all Wisconsin residents. And I do note on here that existing law already requires the DNR to reduce fees through rulemaking if for 3 consecutive years, the year-end balances are greater than 20% of the expenditure levels. So we do have kind of that fail-safe in code that ensures our fees are charged to match our need. This rulemaking process included 6 meetings in 2023 and 2024 with a technical advisory committee. It was made up of Solid Waste Industry Association representatives, a representative from Manufacturers and Commerce, landfill owners and operators, landfill consultants, and a university representative. And many changes were made to our rule proposals based on their constructive feedback, such as reducing submittal requirements and fees for vertical-only expansions of landfills, limiting the increase of plan review fees that we have in the rule, and also implementing those fees in 2027 and 2028. Removing proposed requirements for some baseline groundwater data sampling that we had originally proposed, and in many ways adding flexibility to several areas of code, but while still ensuring that our code is protective. We did receive comments of overall general support for the rule overall from our Wisconsin chapter of the Solid Waste Association of North America and the Wisconsin Utilities Association. And with that, I ask for your approval of WA 1122, and I can answer any questions. Thanks.
Again, we have no public speakers on this item. Are there questions from the board? Robin?
So I don't have a question, but I just wanted to make a comment that before I was appointed to the board, I served at the very start of this rulemaking process on their advisory group and was able to hear firsthand just how much respect and collaboration there was between industry and the department. And it was really impressive to hear that discussion back and forth and to see where the department was able to accommodate requests and to make it easier and simpler for industry, but yet also withhold, keep the requirements, the basic environmental protections that the public deserves. It's a really, as you can tell, it's a really detailed technical rule. And I think the department, I just want to commend you. The department did a really, really great job at managing all of the nuances and really having the technical expertise to be able to go forward, knowing that this is a great example of compromise. I was really impressed with the fee structure and how they were willing to make sure that they had sufficient fees coming in for the staff needed, but doing it in a way that was easier for industry to be able to accommodate that. And so I just want to say thanks for your work. I was really impressed with the outcome, and I just commend the staff as well as the partners on the advisory group for the work that they did to bring this forward. It was a huge task.
Thank you. We had a great team. So.
Other comments? Marcy?
Can you clarify that for me, please? And first, I appreciate the briefing that I had on this, but one of the discussions that we had was that we haven't looked at this in 20 years, right? We haven't adjusted. Is it going to be able to cover? I understand the state, with if you can't carry over more than 20% or whatever you said on the high end, but if it doesn't cover the number of staff and if you could just clarify that, do we
Sure.
expect this change to cover it?
Well, maybe not, 100% of all our fees that might go into doing a review of a plan review. What we tried to do was estimate that cost of how it would cover what we could, and assigned engineer and an assigned hydrogeologist at each landfill site and their work that they would do, the hours that they would put in out there. So it might not cover supervisors or licensing specialists or legal staff, but it is an increment moving forward that will help us to at least gather some additional fees and make some improvements, or
Okay.
internally and externally, so.
And it is just one piece of the fees that the
Correct.
landfills deal, or the department has authority over one portion of the fees.
Correct, yep.
Okay. And in that, as Robin said, the comments in the background information, nobody's ever really thrilled about a fee increase, but it's acceptable. Is that what you heard?
I think overall, especially with those, support from the Solid Waste Association of North America, I mean, that's a mix of many different members of consultants and landfill operators and owners, private and municipal, that are part of that group that have general support for this rule. So, yeah.
Okay. All right. Well, I agree. I
Yeah.
think it was, a huge amount of work for the entire team, and I congratulate you. And especially the emphasis, the discussion that we had is that it's not going to lessen any environmental protections, because those of us who lived through some of those discussions in the earlier days, it's come a long way in improving. So thank you.
Thank you, Marcy. Other comments or questions from the board? I have one, Kate, just as a point of clarification. You mentioned earlier when you were discussing the fee increase and the long period of time since there had been an increase considered, being able to fund staff. I was impressed, I think, when we had the briefing that a number of the staff you're talking about funding are actually staff positions that you have, but you can't afford to pay at this moment, and they're vacant. So the increase in staff is really building funding back to be able to afford the people, the potential staff that you have authorization for.
Correct.
Would you talk about that a little bit more?
Sure. That was a very good description of it. Is we do have a handful of unfunded positions. We do have authority for positions, but we don't have the funding available right now to fill those. And so it is kind of whenever someone, might, retire or move on from the DNR, then we might have an opening because there, we could refill, backfill. But to try to build up, we don't have that capability right now. So this will hopefully allow us to hire one or two positions specifically to focus on landfill regulations. Yeah.
Thank you. Other comments or questions?
I'd make a motion to, are you calling for a motion?
Go ahead. I won't discourage one.
I'll make the motion to adopt WA 1122 in NR 500 to 524.
Okay, we got a motion to approve from Marcy. Is there a second?
Second.
I see a second from Doug. Thank you. Any further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank you.
Kate. Next item is 4C. Land sale, Bowler Station, Shawano County. Terry Bay, Director, Bureau of Facilities and Lands. Welcome, Terry.
Good morning, Chairman Smith, Deputy Secretary Little, and members of the board. I am Terry Bay, Director of Facilities and Lands. The department is requesting approval to sell 7.04 acres of improved land to the village of Bowler for the appraised value of $58,000. This sale would retain a stream bank easement along the banks of the North Branch and Barris River for public fishing and future habitat management. The property, along with the associated improvements, was acquired by the department in 1939 and expanded in 1949 and 1984 for a department forestry ranger station. A new forestry ranger station has now been constructed east of Bowler in the village of Gresham, which consolidated forestry needs in the area. With the completion of this new ranger station, The boulder property and associated improvements are no longer needed by the department. The department, we are requesting the board approve the sale of 7.04 acres of improved department-owned land formerly used as the Boulder Ranger Station in Shawano County, as it is no longer necessary for the state's use for conservation purposes, and approve the sale of this state land for $58,000.
We have no speakers on this item. Are there questions or comments from the board? Doug, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. Hey, Terry. So this property is within the original boundaries of Stockbridge-Munsee Reservation. Was there any discussions with the tribe, or did they
There
approach
was,
the state on this property?
Yeah, there was conversations with the tribe. The tribe came out to take a look at the property along with the county. The tribe decided not to pursue acquisition of the land if the village was interested in the land.
Yep, and one more, Chair. One more.
Yeah, go ahead.
There was an easement or an encroachment mentioned in here. How is that encroachment being addressed in the
Yes,
sale?
the encroachment was on to Village of Boulder property, so it'll be resolved by the sale.
All right, thank you.
What does the village plan to do with the property? Do you know? Just a
They
curiosity
own the
question.
property adjacent to it, so they just they plan on expanding their use west here.
Other questions from the board? Robin?
I just have one that I forgot to ask earlier. Where, budget-wise, where does that, the funds that are from the proceed of the sale, where do those funds go?
They go back into the real estate funds for forestry, and that's where they came from for the original purchase in 1939.
Thank you.
Other questions? I have one, Terry, that I read in the green sheet materials and asked about the bidding process for this, because oftentimes, land no longer needed gets put out for sale or bidding. And in this particular case, there was no bidding allowed. Would you talk about that a little bit, please?
Yeah, what we do is we follow administrative code. This is considered state forest land. And in administrative code, it gives us a prescription on how to pursue the disposition of the land. And those first steps are to reach out to local units of government, see if it would still be used for public use, and to reach out to the tribe.
Okay, thank you. Other questions from the board? Hearing none, could we have a motion on this one?
I'll make the motion, Chair, to approve the sale of the former Boulder Ranger Station to the Village of Boulder.
Got a motion to approve from Doug. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a second from Deb. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Those opposed say no. Motion carries. Thank you,
Thank
Terry.
you. Thank you.
We'll move on to item 4D. Request approval of department recommendations for the 2025 bear harvest season. Randy Johnson, large carnivore specialist. Welcome, Randy.
Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Yeah, good morning, Chair Smith, Deputy Secretary Little, members of the board. My name is Randy Johnson, large carnivore specialist with the Wildlife Management Program. And as you shared, I'm here to request approval of the bear season recommendations for the upcoming 2025 bear season. So there we go. I'd like to start with a slide reviewing the previous year, some highlights, if you will, regarding a couple main points with the bear harvest season from last year, as well as our bear conflict program, and kind of set the stage for what was and what we're looking to do going forward. So starting first with the bear harvest season from last year, we had 4,301 bears taken by state licensed hunters. There were an additional 51 bears taken on egg damage permits, 33 more on the Learn to Hunt program, and 44 via Ojibwe off-reservation harvest. This 4,300 bears was a pretty substantial increase in harvest from the year before, where we saw just under 3,000 bears taken. But really the anomaly was 2023. Our average over the last decade or so has been about 4,000 some bears taken. So this was very much kind of a return to the average, if you will, as far as state harvest. The map on the right there shows the distribution of harvest. You see those, I know you can't read it, but the darker colors represent the higher proportion of harvest. So unsurprisingly, most of our harvest is across the northern part of the state. We got pretty decent harvest numbers that extend down into the central and western part of the state as well. Interestingly, perhaps a surprise, Marinette County is our #1 producing county for bear harvest, over 300 bears taken. But otherwise, you see the general pattern is that north central, northwestern part of the state, Price, Sawyer, Rusk, where we see generally the highest numbers of harvest. Also worth noting, way down in the southwest part of the state, Grant County, we had a bear taken down in Grant County this year. And that's a first for us. We've been seeing more and more observations of bears through the Snapshot Wisconsin program, public reports, et cetera, including bears with sows with cubs in some of that southwestern part of the state, having one harvested as a first down there, but interesting note. This 4,300 bears is about 12% over the total state harvest target of 3,850 bears last year. This is essentially driven by average hunter success rates. The way this process works is we issue licenses to achieve our harvest targets based on average hunter success rates. And in any given year, those average hunter success rates can deviate. They can deviate largely based on natural food availability. So in certain years, there's an abundance of natural food. Bears don't need to hit hunter baits as much. They don't need to travel as much. And generally, we see hunter success and harvest decline. And the opposite's also true. When there's little food available naturally for bears, they're more apt to take advantage of hunter baits. And that seems to be the case last year. Nothing extraordinary, but enough of an increase in hunter success rates to drive us up above that total harvest target. But again, when we set these harvest targets, we recognize that this variability is inherent. And we try to focus less on any single year, whether we're above a target or below a target, and try to focus more on the trends. Are we meeting these objectives through time? Is the population remaining in a place that we're looking to keep it? And really looking at those trends and making adjustments annually to make sure the trends are going the direction we want to go. And that's the case this year. We have no reason to believe this level of harvest is likely to cause long-term biological impacts to the bear population. In fact, by all measures, the population is stable or even growing in all of our bear zones, with the exception of D. Zone D, as we'll talk about in a minute, is an area that our objective is to reduce the bear population. So all in all, things are in a good place with the bear population. The other side of the equation is the bear conflicts. And so as a quick reminder, the department partners with USDA Wildlife Services to address bear conflicts. These conflicts are recorded and classified under different categories. The abatement options range from technical advice to non-lethal strategies like trap and relocate, all the way to the lethal strategies of trap and euthanize or shooting permits. So really just trying to tailor the abatement strategy to the specific incident, whether it's a bear hitting a bird feeder for the first time or, bears hitting cornfields, things like that. We try to tailor it to the individual situation. And there is financial compensation provided by state law. So last year, the total damage complaints were up. But again, just like with harvest, we kind of returned to the average. And the year before, both harvest and damage was way down because of an abundance of natural food, primarily. So last year, as normal, about 75% of our calls are nuisance calls. So these are bears and bird feeders, campground situations, things like that. And most of those are handled through technical assistance. Basically, removing food attractants from those bears usually resolves those problems. The other 25% of the calls are split pretty evenly between agriculture complaints, primarily cornfields and apiaries. And those are, especially the cornfields, largely resolved through trapping and relocating bears. And then the third category is property. And these are a little bit more variable. It can be structures, it can be hobby farm animals, it can be pets. things around the house, outside gardens, things like that. And these, again, are really handled just based on the situation, whether it's lethal or non-lethal. That graph there shows the trends. The orange, I think, is the nuisance complaints, by far the most. Again, basically across the board, pretty flat trends in conflict. If anything, the green line, which represents the agriculture, are actually declining somewhat across the state, which is good news. Finally, as far as the location of these conflicts, the counties of Douglas, Bayfield, and Sawyer had the most nuisance complaints last year. Rusk, Sawyer, and Washburn had the most agricultural complaints. Nothing earth-shattering here. These are, basically it matches where we have those highest harvest numbers as well. And so where we have a lot of bears, we have a lot of harvest, and we tend to have the most conflicts. Okay, so a quick review of the process and what I'm about to present here today. There's a lot that goes into these recommendations, and I want to make sure I thank everybody that's been involved, starting with our Bear Advisory Committee. The department has this committee made up of staff, federal agency partners. We have GLIFWIC representation. We have stakeholder groups from hunting organizations, agricultural, et cetera. And this group gets together every year in early December, and we spend a whole day of information overload, looking at lots and lots of information related to the bear program from the hunting side, the conflict side, the social side, the bear health side, and try to come up with these recommendations as a starting point. This process follows the bear management plan that was approved back in 2019. It is effectively an adaptive management strategy. We're not trying to manage for a specific number of bears. There is no numeric population goal. Rather, we're looking at essentially these 6 items on the screen here. These metrics reflect bear conflicts, bear hunting, and bear health. We're looking at the status of those in relation to the bear population trends, and ultimately coming up with these objectives of, do we want to maintain the bear population roughly where it's at today? Do we want to reduce harvest and let the population grow? Or do we want to maybe increase harvest and reduce the bear population? And these are the conversations and discussions that are occurring on a zone-by-zone basis. And ultimately that helps us determine a harvest target, which is the number of bears we'd like to take. And then finally, following administrative code, we determine a license recommendation based on average hunter success rates. So that, in a nutshell, is the process. And so what I've got here is a table. I'll kind of go through zone by zone, and then we can obviously open up for discussion. But hit the highlights here of the zone by zone discussions that we've had. So Zone A, this is a core bear zone. A lot of interest in bear hunting here. It currently takes about 10 years to draw a license in this zone. It's that Price County up to Douglas, Bayfield area. Very good bear habitat, lots of public land. The objective for a number of years has been to maintain the bear population in this zone. We're looking to do that another year here. So we're recommending the exact same harvest target, 1,075 bears as last year. But because the hunter success rates keep climbing upward in this zone, that results in a slight reduction in the licenses in this zone from last year. The other thing that requires mentioning here is, for the last 5 or 6 years, we have exceeded the targets in this zone. And we're cognizant of that. Like I said, we're trying to watch the trends, make sure we're achieving our objective of maintaining the population here. And the model does suggest that the population in this zone remains stable through time. And so we feel pretty comfortable with where we're at here, being mindful of this pattern of exceeding the targets here. And we've had lots of side discussions about ways we can maybe address that, which I won't get into here, but being mindful of where we're going with this zone specifically. Zone B. Zone B is the northeastern part of the state. Pretty similar story, very highly desirable unit. Takes 11 or 12 years right now to draw up here. And so there's a long wait time for hunters in Zone B. The population, by the model suggesting the population remains pretty stable, maybe even a slight increase in abundance here. And so we're looking to keep the population basically where it's at. To do so, we're looking to increase harvest just a little bit from last year, up to 900 bears from 850 last year. And with that, an increase of about 100 licenses from last year as well. I think this would be a very welcome recommendation, especially from bear hunters that are waiting over a decade to draw a license here. We can offer this level while also maintaining that bear population basically where it's at today. Zone C. C is our central part of the state. A little more variability here with some patches of really good bear habitat, some patches not so much. We've seen some fluctuations in hunter success rates here as well. But overall, the objective has been to maintain this bear population relative to where it's at. And the model is actually suggesting it's starting to grow. We're seeing a little bit of an increase in abundance here. So we'd like to keep this population, but basically increase harvest a little bit to get ahead of this increasing trend in growth. So you'll see we're looking to increase harvest here up to 750 bears. That's an increase from the 600 last year. And with that, raise licenses up to 3,750. Zone D. Zone D is a little bit of a different story. I mentioned it earlier. This is where we see the biggest chunk of our agricultural damage from bear, primarily cornfields in this area. With the new zones 5 years ago, we set an objective to decrease bear numbers in this zone. And that has been the objective. That continues to be the objective. We initially set pretty high targets of 1,800 bears. We did that for 3 years. Last year, we reduced that pressure down to 1,100 bears, and that's what we're looking to continue for a second year here. With this recommendation, 1,100 bears as a harvest target, that translates to 3,570 tags. At this level, we expect it will continue that downward pressure on the bear population in this zone, while also being mindful of concerns of overdoing it perhaps, or issuing too many licenses to result in conflicts. Neither of those seem to be an issue at this point. So we're obviously being mindful of that, but we feel pretty comfortable with the direction this one's going and recommending the numbers up there. Zone E, southwestern part of the state, a growing healthy bear population in this area of the state, especially in the northern part, but I mentioned earlier, more and more bears popping up down in the southwest as well. Not looking for major changes here. The recommendation has been to maintain this bear population. As I mentioned, it is a growing population, but we're looking to kind of slow or level off that growth through time. To achieve that, we're looking at a little bit of a bump in harvest, up to 200 bears, 2,000 licenses. Not crazy different than where we've been the last few years with this zone. And then finally, Zone F. This one is a little bit of a different zone in that there's not much for bear habitat or bear numbers in this zone. It's primarily, human development. It's our big cities. We have a little bit of a different objective with that, and that's this term of allow local control. So this term comes right out of the bear plan. It's essentially trying to say, let's make sure that we can offer a good number of bear licenses to anybody that wants to try bear hunting in this zone. There are some bears up in the northern part of the zone. We're harvesting a couple of dozen a year. Basically, if somebody has the opportunity and wants to give it a shot, we want to make sure they can get a license relatively easily. So that's what we're looking to do here. Harvest targets 50 bears. We don't expect to take that many, but it does then allow us to issue 500 licenses, and that's basically meeting the demand. I think we had 700 applicants last year, so at this level, we think we can meet the demand for licenses and keep this thing in a good spot. So summing that all up, overall, we're looking at about a 6% increase in the harvest target over last year, up to 4,075 bears. And when you add up all the license recommendations, it's about a 14% increase from last year, up to a little over 13,000 licenses. Most of that increase in the licenses is in C and D, related to both increase in harvest target in C and variability in the success rates. That's what I've got for you, and would be happy to answer questions.
We do have one speaker for this item, and the board supports this. I'd suggest we take the speaker's comments, and then we can go back to Randy with questions. So Rob Bowman, Wisconsin Conservation Congress Chair. I see Rob on the screen. Welcome, Rob. You're on.
Good morning. Thank you, Chairman Smith, Deputy Secretary Little, members of the board. Thank you for the opportunity to testify before you today regarding the bear harvest quotas for 2025. I'm Rob Bowman, Chairman of the Wisconsin Conservation Congress. DNR staff participated in our recent WCC Bear Committee meeting that was held at the Schmeekley Reserve on December 7th. And the proposed quotas that are before you today were presented to our committee and were supported by our committee. The WCC feels the permit levels recommended are appropriate given the goals, current population estimates, and success rates identified utilizing the best available science. The Congress respectfully requested the board approve the recommended bear harvest quotas as presented by the department for the 2025 season. Closing, I want to thank department staff for their continued engagement with the WCC on these important resource management issues. And the Congress is proud to be a part of the current system that Wisconsin utilizes to gather public input and feedback on resource-related proposals. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Are there any questions from the board of Rob? Doug, go ahead.
Oh, no, none for Rob, Chair.
Okay.
Thanks.
Questions for Rob? All right. Thank you, Rob. Good to see you. Thanks for
You
your
too, Bill.
input.
Thanks.
I'd like to also mention we had a couple of written comments come into the board. One from the Wisconsin Bear Hunters Association supporting passage and one from the Wisconsin Animal Protection Society opposing passage. So with that, board have any questions? Doug, go ahead.
Thanks, Chair. And thanks, Randy, for the briefing. It helped with some of my questions I had. I think these are good numbers. You know, I certainly support them, but it doesn't go without having a discussion about some of the things that we're seeing in relation, especially a 12% over harvest target. I mean, those are things we can talk about probably forever, but if you're seeing that as a trend, you know, the thing we didn't talk about during the briefing was some of the things that might be driving us toward over harvest. And, you know, one has to think about technology improvements. You know, I know the guys in the north, a lot of dog hunters, and have some experience with that as well. The technology now is such that, you know, you can pinpoint those tracking collars. They're ranging out further. You can track further. I mean, all of those things that are improvement in technology certainly have to have something to do with more successful harvest, especially you can see it are A, B, C zones, where that's probably most of that method type is being used. So some of them things I think are important for us to take a look at. And in relation to the 12% and some of the things you talked about, hearing of concerns, particularly from the white tribes, you know, looking at those things going forward and addressing some of the abilities to prevent an overharvest to that extent might help those concerns as well. So
Yeah.
that's just one. The other thing I think on a really positive note is in Zone D, if you look at how we're handling that to reduce the population due to the issues that are in Zone D, I think that's an excellent example. Our bear plan calls for adaptive management. You know, we've talked a lot about adaptive management over the months, and I think that's a really good example in Zone D of how we can use adaptive management to be successful and have the flexibility to address that issue that just one of all of the zones, but particularly in that zone. So, yeah, again, thanks for the presentation.
Absolutely.
Other questions?
Hey.
Rachel, go ahead.
Thank you for the presentation. I just had a kind of a clarifying question. You know, you had for Zone A that there was a reduction in hunter effort after the zone was changed. That's also where there's the most complaints. Why would there have been a reduction in effort due to the zone change?
Yep, that's a great question. And we spent a ton of time in committee and with the Congress discussing this, but the short version of it is with the old zones, that area was part of Zone D. And you could draw that license in about every 5 years. And with the rearranged zones, it became A, and it instantly turned it to about a 10-year wait. And we think this is still a little bit of theory, right? Based on basically hunter behaviors. If people are drawing this once a decade tag, it seems like they're choosing to hunt farther south in Zone A, Price County, et cetera, because the hunter effort has stayed about static there and a reduction up in that northern part. So we want to keep looking into that, see where folks are coming from, et cetera. But it's very clear we have hunter survey data after every season that asks where did you hunt, et cetera. And it's very clear that there's been a big drop in effort up there. And you're right, does that then lead to more conflict, or will it lead to more conflict? That's something we're, I think, in the very early stages of still, but very much trying to be mindful of. And separately, we've had a ongoing conversation about, do we need to split Zone A in half, north and south, so that we could issue licenses specifically in this northern part of the zone where people are evidently choosing to some degree less to go to. There's lots of pros and cons there. It's a whole separate conversation, but at this point, we're pretty comfortable just staying the course and keeping our eye on it, but recognizing that there might be kind of a shift there. Yeah,
Thank you.
you bet.
Other questions? Robin?
I have just a couple.
Sure.
Can you, and I appreciate your briefing. I am by no means an expert on bear hunting, so it was really great to learn both from the green sheet as well as our conversation. But can you clarify what percentage of hunters hunt using baiting versus using dogs?
Sure, it's a good question. So state law outlines that a bear license in Wisconsin allows basically any legal method, both use of dogs, use of bait. That's 99% of our methods, if you will. There is a distinction in the northern part of the state. You can use both or either method, but the southern three zones, C, E, and F, use of dogs is not allowed. So, but across the board, it's about 2/3 of our bears, 70%, are taken over bait, and about 1/3 are taken with the use of dogs. Now, some people do use both methods. They'll try one, and if they're unsuccessful, they'll switch over to the other, or vice versa. But as it shakes out, use of bait is the more common method, and it accounts for about 2/3 of the harvest, with dogs being the rest.
Thanks. That's really helpful, especially in light of Doug's question, because I was also always impressed with how technology changes over time.
Yeah.
Can I also ask about as far as mortality rates for bears, are there natural predators that come into this equation, or is it a simpler food supply and demand and hunting? Are those the main ways that bears can be killed?
Yeah, drives. Yeah, you're spot on. So natural and human provided foods, whether that's crops or baits or whatever, trash. Food and hunting are what drives bear populations. Food, more food obviously drives it upward, and hunting, we can drive it downward if we choose to do so, or keep it, where it's at. So natural predators, there's not much there. When those bears are cubs, when they're very young with mom, they're vulnerable to being killed by another bear, potentially. That does occur. Wolves occasionally get some, but not a big body of evidence to suggest that they're taking a lot. Road kills happen, things like that. But by and large, the primary source of mortality for adult bears is through hunting. And that's why with this population, we have a fairly good ability to, move populations up or down or maintain them based on harvest. It's because of that.
And then also I was curious about, clearly we have very unpredictable winter seasons. But my understanding is that has less of an impact on bear mortality as opposed to when spring occurs. Is that kind of what?
Yeah. Again, as long as bears have plenty to eat, they're going to go into those winter dens, fat and happy, and they're going to ride out the winter. The cold weather or even lack of snow isn't a really big deal to bears. Believe it or not, a lot of them don't even den up like underground or under shelter. They'll just den up right on the ground in kind of a nest. So if they've got fat supply, their hide, they're fully capable of riding out even our cold winters in that case. But really, I think there's a little more variability in the spring. If you get an early spring, that can bring them out of the den earlier when there's really no food available, and it can extend that early spring period where they're out and about, but there's nothing to eat. And especially those young cubs then become pretty susceptible. Whereas if you have, the normal spring or even a late spring, it keeps them in the den a little bit longer. And then that green up occurs much quicker afterwards. So I think the variability is really in that spring period.
And then just my last question, if I can be allowed one more.
Go ahead, and you can have more besides if you want.
Can you also talk a little bit about when bears are harvested, the uses of the bear products and like my understanding is that there's a fair bit of the bear that's actually utilized for different things. Could you just kind of comment on that briefly?
Absolutely. I appreciate that question because, yeah, I feel, we're here to talk about bear hunting and bear harvest, and it's a lot of numbers, but I don't want to lose sight of the fact that there's a lot of other, good reasons for bear hunting. It's a very social activity. And I find that a lot of folks are surprised to learn that people eat their bears, but these bears provide a ton of good meat. It's a really healthy protein source, just like deer hunting or other forms of hunting. So yeah, most folks are eating these bears. Obviously you get the hide and the skull for whatever kind of trophy or memento you want with that. Another interesting thing that's maybe unique to bears is a lot of people utilize the fat. In the fall, these bears have 4, 5, 6 inches of fat on them. They're very fatty. And you can actually take and render that down and create liquid cooking oil, or there's a ton, you can create soaps and candles, all kinds of different things. And so, yeah, in short, every part of the bear is utilized, basically the best you can.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robin. Other questions, comments?
You betcha. Patty, I don't want to overstep you though, if you had a question.
Well, let's check in with her. Patty, do you have any questions?
Well, I just want to say, as a person whose family has bear hunted for over 20 years, I really appreciate how detailed you gave your presentation. Thank you very much. And as someone also who has eaten a lot of bear, so it was very informative.
Thanks.
Thank you, Patty. Marcy.
Okay. Hi, Randy. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Haven't seen you in a while. And we did have a time for a briefing, but afterwards, of course, I had some thoughts on our discussion. First of all, the advisory committee, because you met at Schmeekly, I assume UW-Stevens Point research, we see a lot on their den research and cute pictures of cubs. How does that play into the input?
Yeah, it's a good question. Their project it's been ongoing for a long time. So a lot of the information in the bear plan is a result of, as far as the biology and things, comes from their project. Their project is ongoing. They've just got some endowment and they attend our committee meetings. I get invited to do a guest lecture every year with one of their bear classes. So it's a pretty good partnership. Continuing to do what they're doing and finding ways to integrate that into the bear program overall.
Okay, great. Highly encouraged. And then the slide that included the nuisance complaints and a leaf blower going in January in the background. We apologize, but apparently it's a very light snow out there. Yeah. Oh, is it? Okay. The nuisance complaints and the interactions, if we look at the habitat that bears are in and the changes of perhaps development or things like that, could that be a part of the picture on the nuisance that people are basically moving into areas that hadn't had them before?
Absolutely. Yep. It's twofold. People are moving into where bears are and, where people haven't necessarily been, more and more cabins and, dispersed housing. But also we've got bears moving south into more populated areas as well. But one anecdote is 2020, we saw a big jump in nuisance complaints with the pandemic. And the assumption there is a lot of people were spending time at home. A lot of people were spending time at their cabins more than usual. And they maybe weren't thinking about bears at that point, and we saw some conflicts that came of that. But yeah, I think that's the big part of it, is a lot of it's human behavior as much as it is bear behavior.
Yeah, and there's some good outreach on that, on how they can live together and
Absolutely
reduce those nuisance complaints. So that was one. And then the other item that you listed in your PowerPoint that was not in our packet, the hunter crowding conflict, we have not seen that yet. So, or maybe I shouldn't assume we're not seeing that, but in Zone A, for it to take 10 years to get a tag, we're not seeing a reduction necessarily in people trying or anything like that. But do you want to talk about that we're not seeing hunter conflict in areas that are that popular?
Sure. Yep. So yeah, the idea of hunter crowding and conflict would be, how many bear hunters are you seeing out there? Are they preventing you from hunting where you want to hunt, et cetera, things like that. And we ask those questions every year at our end of the year survey to bear hunters. And so across the board, we're seeing low levels of, these conflict scores, if you will. So it occurs out there every year, just like with anything, but it's not at like a high level. So the other way to say it is most people are not experiencing crowding issues with other bear hunters, which is a good thing. As far as the wait times, it's kind of a separate issue, where there's more space out there to put more bear hunters, but our success rates, especially in A, have been so high, they're 60 to 70%, that issuing more licenses is going to bring up that harvest, to levels that we don't want to see it. And so if those success rates stay this high, there's not a lot more we can do as far as issuing more licenses. And so when supply, doesn't meet demand, it's going to continue to result in those long wait times. Does that help?
Yeah, it does. But then if we look at the more aggressive method in D,
Yep.
it hasn't necessarily borne out either. Where
the conflict issues?
Right.
Correct. Yeah. Yeah. We were pretty mindful of that right off the bat, especially when we had those really high targets of 1,800 bears. I think we were issuing 4,000 to 5,000 licenses. And so this year we're at 35, I think. So below where we had been for a few years. And we had a few issues. Some people were concerned, we heard about it, but that didn't translate out on our annual surveys as a big issue. I will say zone D is the zone with the highest level of conflicts, but it's like, 25% or something that are saying there's a crowding concern, whereas the rest of them are like 10 to 15%. So it's the highest relative to their zones, but it's still not at a concerning level, we'll say. So I think people are, especially in that zone, we're 5 years in, people are starting to understand that there's a lot of other bear hunters out there. They're maybe becoming a little more accustomed to that, trying to find private land, for example, to hunt on instead of public, ways you can get around that. The other benefit to it is you can draw that license much faster too. So if you waited 10 years to get a license and then you're, in a crowded situation, you're going to be pretty upset. But if you can draw that license every couple of years, you're a little more comfortable putting up with other people bear hunting. So I think that's kind of the dynamic we're seeing.
Okay. But overall, it's not experiencing necessarily the aging out of hunters or anything like that. There's still the license sales.
Yes, we're seeing an increase in interest. We're seeing more and more people buying preference points and applying for licenses for bear. So we're going against the trend that we see in most other species. There's more and more people interested in bear hunting.
You don't happen to know off the top of your head if it's if it's out of state hunters that are.
I do know
that.
it's not.
Not.
It's a number of
I
people.
was trying to be polite, Doug.
No, it's a question that comes up every year. So I continually check on that. Our license is set up by state law that everybody's treated the same, residents and non-residents. Everybody goes into the same pool. For the last, decade plus, about 5% of the licenses have been issued to non-residents. And so it's not an overwhelming number. It's not really an increasing trend. It's a very small percentage going to non-residents. I don't know the number of non-residents buying preference points or things like that, but I don't think that's the biggest driver.
Okay. And then just a clarification on the zone, the Marinette having the highest is rather surprising, but it also, once you think about their differences in habitat, makes sense.
Mhm.
But that county is split, and that hasn't raised an issue
Yeah.
in the management. Okay.
No, not, we've heard a little bit of, Doug and I talked about this, a little bit of an issue between B and C with the distinction of wait times there that law enforcement's advised us. There's a few people zone jumping there. They're drawing a C license, hunting in B. So we're trying to get ahead of that issue. But for the most part, yeah, I think Marinette County's got lots of bear and obviously good interest, and nothing comes to mind as far as a zone issue there.
Awesome. All right. Thank you very much.
Other questions for Randy? Doug?
One more, Chair, and it's more of an observation. So I was always aware that, and this is about 20 years ago now, that a Class B permit was always something that individuals had available to them to accompany the bear hunters. So in our discussion and being informed that the way it's done now, it was kind of an eye opener for me. So now a tag holder can enlist the assistance of the dog hunters, or any hunter, I suppose. But so that a lot of the dog hunters aren't tag holders necessarily, they're assisting the tag holders in their hunt, in their harvest. So it was a bit of an eye opener for me. It seems like it would cause a few enforcement nightmares. I mean, what do you do with concealed carry people out there? Can they carry? I mean, just a ton of questions, and I mean, obviously our numbers are showing high harvest, but you know what, again, examining what those are attributed to is something we should look at going forward. Not saying that accompanying hunters is the reason, but it just surprised me that's what's happening.
Can you just repeat when that happened? The background noise, I couldn't hear.
I think it was about 2014, like about a decade ago, where the Class B licenses were eliminated, and that was state law, because that's where all that's identified. So about a decade ago, that was removed.
Randy, are you comfortable to comment on what the significance of that change is, and if it has resulted, Doug had indicated that, maybe that's caused some change, and I don't know what the impacts are.
Yeah.
I don't want to push into something you're not familiar with or comfortable with, but it's an unanswered question.
Yeah, no, it's so that Class B license was basically required to participate in the dog training, or I think it was required to assist somebody in baiting, just assisting basically. And when that was eliminated, now you can assist as long as there's somebody with a license and you follow, all the other rules. You don't need that Class B license anymore. So, one of the direct impacts is we no longer have any data on how many people are training their dogs or, doing this assisting. We also have no idea how many non-residents are coming into the state to train their dogs, totally legal. What impacts that has is probably an open question, because we don't have a ton of data to get at that. But, we do hear concerns sometimes from our residents about non-residents coming in, especially with the dog training. Heard more and more of that. So, its actual impacts on harvest are maybe a little bit less so, I think, because the Class A license, your regular bear license, allows both methods. You can try baiting, and if it's unsuccessful, you can find a dog group to take you out, or vice versa. There's guiding licenses as well, which is kind of a separate thing. If you're doing this if you're assisting for compensation, it requires a guide license. But a lot of folks are happy to take other hunters out and, participate in the social side of bear hunting as well. And it probably does increase our hunter success rates to some extent. And it might have an impact on keeping those wait times longer then, because of the higher success rates. But I'm quickly getting into speculation. So.
Okay, thank you. Rachel?
Any complaints of private landowners with the dogs running through?
Unfortunately, yeah.
That-
That's something that comes up every year. It's a tricky spot. Those dogs, the common thing you'll hear is the dogs don't know property boundaries, which is true. A lot of our hunters are, I think, trying to follow the law. They're doing the right thing. They're trying to do everything they can. And sometimes, the dogs are going to cross a property boundary and they're going to deal with it. But I think there's also some of those bad apples out there. And we have conversations every year with law enforcement, with our bear hunting groups, to try to reduce some of that bad apple behavior, let's call it. So something that continues to be an issue, and something we're going to continue to try to address the best we can.
Other questions? I have a comment and a question. I want to double down on Patty's comment about bear meat. I think your comment indicated the prevailing public opinion that the stuff is awful and you got to stay away from it. And my experience has been just the opposite. It's absolutely delicious. It's a healthy and very good tasting wild game, and I encourage anybody to give it a try. But the caution is, berries are harvested early in the fall when the temperatures are warm, and you got to deal with the carcass quickly, and you got to take care of that meat. And when you do, it's delicious.
Absolutely.
My question is, in the northern zones where you have both the opportunity to bait or hunt with dogs, the way our system is set up is every other year, the bait hunters get to start the first week or the dog hunters get to start. And I know locally there's a lot of gaming of that. So many of the bait hunters are not real interested in taking a license to harvest on the year that the dog hunters get to go first. And a lot of their pressure seems to swing toward the off year when the bait hunters get to go first. Does that complicate management? Does it create some kind of a biennial swing in the data from one year to the next? Could you just comment on that and managing those two different starts to the season?
Sure. Yeah. No, it's a great point. It does add a little bit of variability into the system. I talked earlier about natural food availability really drives our success rates. That's especially true with bait hunters. It's less true with dog hunters because they can be more mobile. They don't have to rely on bait. It still has an impact, but less so. So if you have one of those off years with either really good food availability or really poor food availability, the impact of that can be different if it's a year where dog hunters go first or bait hunters go first. We do see, I think, some variability in our overall harvest and success rates as well. But because it's just the alternating first week of the season, once you get past those first 5 days, the second 5 days, you kind of see it switch, and then the rest of the season is pretty much the same. So the variability is there, but I wouldn't call it like dramatic from year to year, but it's definitely there.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Any other questions, Randy? With that, I'd ask for a motion.
Make that motion, Chair, make a motion to approve the 2025 bear harvest season recommendations.
We have a motion to approve from Doug. Is there a second?
I'll
I'll
second.
second.
Oh, Patty gets a second.
All right, Patty, thank you. We have a second from Patty. Any further comments from the board? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Thank you, Randy.
Thank you.
Okay, at this point on the agenda, we're up to item 5, open forum, which we usually do right after break. Let me check with Ashley. Ashley, do you know if we've got the presenters under open forum ready to go? Okay. So any preference of the board? All right, we'll take our break early and we will come back here for open forum at 10 o'clock on the button. Thank you. We're adjourned for break.
and learning already and feeling more comfortable.
He was not who took all the process, and I always forget what he looked like.
Right.
What's that?
Favorite restaurant, something, you know.
What was it, 13 shares?
Yep. It
Did
was.
you get a holiday card from them? Did you?
Back in the summer of 20. No, sorry, our tour will not be back.
We should talk about that pretty soon too. It's well, summer meetings, locations, and
Yeah.
I don't know if you have that on the radar for some time in the future, but I know we started the conversation earlier last year.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. Maybe,
With the agenda item number 5, the open forum. We have 5 appearances under open forum, and the first one is David Wilcox on the Wilcox Waterfowl Protection Area. Welcome, David. You're a tougher man than I, walking around with a t-shirt and short sleeves today.
I come before you today to address an egregious wrong perpetrated upon citizens of the state of Wisconsin by the state of Wisconsin that requires immediate resolution for the sake of honor and justice. On June 6, 1855, the Wilcox family farm was founded by my great-great-great-grandfather, Lorenzo Wilcox. Upon arriving in Washoe County, he and his children began clearing and working the land to reap Mother Nature's bounty. With that came the wisdom that for that bounty to sustain, the land must be respected and nurtured, giving back what had been taken to maintain a fertile balance. Through the years, this approach prevailed and allowed successful farming of the sand country we lived on, following the principles of regenerative agriculture long before that was a thing or had a name. For the love of the land became the motto of our family farm. Wildlife conservation and sustainability also became a goal. And through that, concerted efforts began with numerous purchases, projects, and finally the purchase of a land in Washoe County that included an area with lots of springs. In consultation with DNR and the Fish and Wildlife Service staff, we turned it into a large spring lake, and the Wilcox Waterfowl Protection or Production Area was born. Through our own observations and consultations with hunters in the area, it was becoming clear that the numbers of waterfowl were declining, likely due to overharvest and the resulting change in migratory habits. We aim to reinvite the waterfowl back and provide them with a safe zone from which they could nest and reproduce without hunting pressure. We had the full support of the DNR and Fish and Wildlife staff we worked with this endeavor, and the effort was successful and remains such to this day. A few years back, NRB considered wildlife refuges for designation change so they could be open to public for hunting. 6 persons spoke in opposition to the opening of the Wilcox Waterfowl Production Area because DNR agreed to the stipulation that the property never be hunted, a requirement for us to sell it in the first place. Let me be clear. Without this no hunting agreement, we refused to sell and would not have. Retired DNR personnel were among the testifiers to these facts. And thank you, Mr. Smith, for your support at that meeting. This past fall, however, we caught people hunting and were told that they can duck hunt if they keep their feet wet. To be clear, the drainage ditch present only became having enough water when a rock berm was installed in the ditch backing up the water. In short, the DNR's assertion that this area no longer serves as a refuge is false. The assertion that the drainage ditch leaving the Lake Wilcox is navigable is false. And the claim made to us that DNR is not violating its purchase agreement with our family is also false. As such, we discussed during hunting. Therefore, we formally petition this board to reverse the current regulations and designations for the Wilcox Waterfowl production area and maintain it with no hunting allowed as DNR agreed to at purchase. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Are there questions from the board?
Just a clarification.
Marcy?
The year of that, please? The year that you said the 6 people spoken testimony opposed?
Actually, I don't have the year. I had requested that information. Specifically, it was in October at an NRB meeting. It was like 3 or 4 years back. I just don't remember when it was. I know Mr. Smith was there and Mike Foy was there, and I just don't remember the year. And
I remember the issue and the discussion very well.
yeah, and
Yeah, it came to the board from staff with recommendations on a number of different properties that were currently refuges that they asked to change the designation on. And the board ended up voting in support of that.
correct.
Okay, thank you. We'll get it. Thanks.
Other questions from the board?
I guess I just am curious if there is some follow-up that can happen on this. I just like to understand and learn more.
We could certainly follow up. Thank you.
Okay. Doug?
Just a clarification, so the current designation is that there's no hunting on the preserve.
The current designation is, it is no longer considered a refuge by DNR. Fish and Wildlife Service owns the land, but now because the ditch is considered navigable, that falls under DNR's jurisdiction, and they allow activity if you keep your feet wet, but you cannot hunt on the dry land.
Thank you.
Yeah, I recall at the time there was a different management philosophy between the Federal Fish and Wildlife Service land and the Wisconsin right to navigate on the navigable waters that were sort of disjointed at that property, and that was part of the discussion at the time.
Thank you.
Okay, sounds like we're going to take a fresh look at it. Thank you, David. Next presenter is Jim Olson, Madison, Home Lake Rural Petitioners, Invasive Species. Welcome, Jim.
Thank you, Chairman Smith, members of the board, Deputy Secretary Little. I'm Jim Olson. I'm been a trial lawyer with Lawton Cates since 1966. And part of my experience, I've done open records requests. I did one to the DNR a little while ago, and I got a response from them. And my comments today will be based upon the open records response, as well as my study of the scientific records dealing with invasive species. 7 years ago, there was a Wisconsin study which indicated that ballast systems in wake surfing boats retained water even if they were tried to be emptied. And they showed that a minimum of average of 8 gallons of water, as much as 20 gallons of water remained and were a threat for the spread of invasive species. There also is DNR regulation 19.055, which requires all water to be drained from ballast systems and other things in the boat so that invasive species are not spread. I have reviewed the last 60 citations issued by the department as far as violations of 19.055. Almost all of them deal with people that did not drain their live wells. Absolutely none dealt with failure to drain from ballast systems. And we know that ballast systems cannot be drained. We do not know the number of wake boats that there are in the state of Wisconsin, although our cursory check of the registration records show that there are in the thousands. So there are a number of them out there. The big issue now is quagga mussels. Those were discovered in Lake Geneva in this summer. They were not discovered by DNR. DNR did not discover them. The quagga mussels have been in Lake Geneva for 2 to 3 years. So we don't know how many other lakes in Wisconsin currently have quagga mussels, and quagga mussels which can be spread in the ballast system. We also know from the work I saw that the quagga mussels have now morphed into a shallow water quagga mussel, which means that numerous lakes in Wisconsin, hundreds of lakes in Wisconsin, are now susceptible to quagga mussels. And quagga mussels are very destructive. They deplete the bottom of the food stream. And that is a great problem for fisheries. Well, this department is, I complete my comments.
Okay, if you want to make a closing comment or anything, go ahead.
Well, my closing comment is I'm very discouraged by what has happened. The department is the agency responsible under the public trust doctrine. I am a beneficiary of the public trust doctrine, and I do not feel that our rights as beneficiaries of the public trust doctrine are being properly protected. It's not only me. The Wisconsin Conservation Congress voted in every county to ban ballast systems. The vote was over 75%. So I'm asking the department to fulfill their responsibilities under the public trust doctrine to protect us from the spread of these invasive species. I'm very discouraged.
Thank you, Jim.
Any questions?
Questions from the board? Hearing none?
Okay, I'm
Thank you,
done.
Jim. Our next speaker is Carol Phillips, Presque Isle, representing herself on wake surfing. Welcome, Carol.
Thank you all. Carol Phillips, I'm a retired civil engineer. Wake surfing is that relatively new and growing sport with a large boat designed to make the biggest wake possible so someone can surf behind it like surfing in the ocean. In addition to all the environmental problems, the wakes are dangerous and force others off the water. The industry's own study shows that if a surf boat passes 300 feet away, a full football field from your boat, its wake will still be more than a foot high when it hits you. That's a big wake. Lakes a mile across don't see waves more than a foot high on the windiest days per the wave charts. The industry's data does not extend beyond 300 feet, but because the waves dissipate very slowly over deep water, dangerous waves can persist for several hundred feet more, as many will attest. Skiers are injured, kayakers swamped, a pontoon tossed onto a dock, two boys in a boat swamped and their boat sunk, an 80-year-old fishing, his boat thrown onto shore twice, and how many others had to leave the lake before they became victims. And in all those events, the surfers kept surfing, unaware of the danger in their wake. Why? First, they don't see their wake hit the other boats or shore. By the time their wake hits a fishing boat a football field away, the surf boat has traveled almost 3 football fields, a typical city block. Second, the boating industry's Wake Responsibly campaign says no more about safety than steer clear of parked boats and smaller watercraft. Why don't they warn that their own study shows that their wake is still extremely large when hitting others several hundred feet away? Third, the state's boating laws are obsolete. At 100 feet, the industry study says the wake is still 20 inches high. The hazardous wake rule says boaters can't approach or pass another boat in a manner as to create a hazardous wake. But as your boating law administrator pointed out, more than 100 feet away is too far to be considered approaching or passing. There'll be 2 competing wake surfing bills introduced this year. It's bad enough that politicians will be bargaining back and forth about serious environmental issues, but safety should never be a bargaining chip. And the DNR's mission statement includes ensuring the right of all people to use and enjoy our lakes. I hope the DNR will abide by that, because with more wake boats every year, others are being pushed off and our lakes are becoming water parks for those wealthy enough to afford the $150,000 boats. The public trust doctrine needs to be taken seriously. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol. Any questions from the board? Okay, thank you, Carol. Our next presenter is Jeff Meisman, Presque Isle, Last Wilderness Alliance, talking about wakeboat ballast systems. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you, Chair Smith and Deputy Secretary Little and board members. Thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Jeff Meisman. I'm a director in Last Wilderness Alliance. I'm also a founding member of the Coalition to Protect Wisconsin Lakes. That's the largest state coalition that protect our lakes. And I'm a retired registered professional engineer. I've been presenting on the subject of wakeboat ballast systems to the NRB, DNR, and WCC now for 3 years. Since that time, there has been little to no progress. It has been known since 1980 that the transfer of aquatic invasive species can occur from ballast systems in boats. From the beginning, wake surf boats had an issue with the increased likelihood of spread of aquatic invasive species because of the uniqueness of the boats. Wake surf boats are not the only boats that can spread AIS. They do, however, pose a unique threat since their ballast tanks cannot be fully drained or inspected, greatly increasing the chance that they are carrying infected water from one lake to another. Even the boating industry instructs operators not to drain the ballast systems or risk equipment damage. Due to this design flaw, these boats violate Wisconsin invasive species rule NR 19-055 and NR 40. The DNR has told us they cannot enforce it because inspection is impossible. I agree. The closed system ballast tanks in wake surf boats require that decontamination of ballast must be included in any safe operation guidelines. So if these boats can be decontaminated, then what's the issue? What's the problem? The problem is currently there are no decontamination facilities, no certification process, and no agency to oversee certification in Wisconsin, and there have been no steps taken to establish these. Last February, a solution to this problem was proposed to the DNR. A pilot program has been suggested that includes infrastructure of available on-demand decontamination centers and a process and an agency to certify and register decontaminated boats. To initiate the pilot program, the group that suggested this has offered to pay for the first decontamination equipment. Yet no action has been taken, not even a recommendation. The NRB, DNR, WCC has the authority to recommend to legislation that the necessary equipment, certification, and inspection verification take place. While these government agencies can do something, they've elected to do nothing to correct this problem. In the meantime, our lakes in Wisconsin, a major economic resource in our state, continue to be infected with aquatic invasive species while these government agencies and our legislation do nothing. This will be your agency's legacy, lakes infected with aquatic invasive species. This is on your group's watch because you have decided not to address this problem. Ballast system boats that cannot be drained are in violation of Wisconsin laws and should be prohibited from being operated in Wisconsin until this problem is addressed. As an engineer, I assure you this is not a significant design or manufacturing challenge to produce wake boats with ballast systems that can be completely drained and inspected. Why don't the manufacturers do it? Because the NRB, DNR, WCC, and our legislation are not holding the boating industry accountable. I'll be willing to take any questions, but I'm disappointed that you guys had no questions for the previous two presenters on this subject.
Thank you, Jeff. Are there questions from the board? Marcy.
Just a clarification on the organization, the Last Wilderness Alliance and the coalition that you met or
Yes.
mentioned, does that include the boating industry representatives?
It does not include the boating industry representatives, but there's over 60 organizations that have signed on to the Coalition to Protect Wisconsin Lakes, including industries like Wisconsin's Green Fire and others, Wisconsin Lakes Association. Over 60 organizations have signed on to that.
Thank you.
Other questions from the board? Okay. Hearing none. Jeff, I have one question for you. Last time we heard from presenters on this issue, and there are a number of you working very closely together on this. So I'll throw this question at you, but maybe it's more appropriate for somebody else. There was a lot of discussion about the money raised by your group and about the pilot project that was possible. And we left that board meeting with the understanding that there was going to be some additional discussion about what that project might look like and what role, if any, the department might be able to play. Have you had an opportunity to have any further discussions on that?
We have had discussions with the legal department. I don't know that they were the correct representatives. They said they were going to go take it back to the aquatic and invasive species group that's working on this. And I haven't heard anything since then. But again, this has all been outlined, and Jim Olson has done a really good job of presenting the potential pilot program. And we need to kick something like this off. I mean, we already have quagga mussels in Lake Geneva, and there's probably other lakes that are infected with these. If they come and decimate our lakes, that decimates our economy. And we can't start this soon enough. I urge you and encourage you to do something. Get involved with this, please. You guys passed a precautionary rule in our 19055 in 2009. Why can't you do another precautionary rule that would prohibit the use of ballast tanks until this is figured out? So at least we don't continue to contaminate our lakes with aquatic invasive species.
Well, thank you. I compliment you and everybody else for your diligence and your persistence on this issue. It is a significant issue, high public interest, and it badly needs attention and a solution. I agree totally with you. And I know that the board has heard a lot of testimony. You certainly have our attention, and we're looking for ways that we can participate in this in a positive way. But it's complicated. A lot of what you're asking for is going to require statutory change legislation. And that's a complicated issue. I'll just leave it at that. But I appreciate your testimony and ask the board one more time if there's any further questions. Robin.
I mean, I don't have a question per se. I think that I'm really appreciative of the fact that this is brought up at every board meeting. So the fact that there may not be questions does not mean that we're not listening. So I think it's really important that you continue to do that. I also think that it would be great for us as board members to have some update from department staff as to, you know, kind of just how are things progressing. I know that there are discussions that are going on. And I just think as Chair Smith noted, it's really complicated and I think it takes time, but I also think that having a little bit more response from the department would be helpful for me as a board member.
Okay, thank you.
Bill, could I make a comment on that?
You can.
Okay.
Briefly, please.
I've been presenting now for 3 years, and so far nothing has been done. I'm the guy that submitted the WCC resolution saying that prohibit the use of ballast systems that got 75% of the popular vote. I'm waiting for some feedback on that. I put WCC resolutions in 2 years ago, and I still don't have any kind of comments on that. It's like it goes into a black hole and I get nothing. So I'm really disappointed in the response I'm getting.
I understand that, Jeff. I was there in the beginning with you, and I've seen things progress. And I would say you're a long ways from where you were when you started. You have a coalition of groups. You have very broad public interest in this, and you've had legislative contacts and discussions. I'd say that's an awful lot of progress, and I credit you for that. I think it's a testimony to the hard work and effort you put into it. But we continue to make those steps forward, and hopefully they'll lead us towards some meaningful solutions here.
I hope so too.
Thank you. Deb?
I have a question.
Oh, Patty, go ahead.
Yeah, and I mean, we're talking about that ever since we've got on the board, we've been talking about these boats. Are doing your due diligence with all the people that you have working with you? Are you guys doing the same thing on what the responsibility as the legislators are? A lot of these conversations start with them.
That's a great question, and thank you for that question. Our group has hired a lobbyist, and we're working on drafting a bill, and that bill will be introduced soon. But the coalition's position is these boats should not be operating in 700 feet from shore or closer. These boats should not be operating in any water less than 30 feet deep. and the preservation, most importantly, the preservation of local control that allows municipalities to enact ordinances that are more restrictive than state regulations. So we have a legislator, we have a lobbyist that we've hired. He's a great lobbyist. He's doing a great job, and he's working with the legislation right now to try to get something through. But thank you for that question, Patty. Appreciate it.
Not a problem. Well, good luck. That's where everything starts.
Thank you.
Or ends.
Deb, did you have a question?
Just not really a question, but working off of what Patty said at the last meeting in your board matters piece was, to basically let's do something. I live in the southeastern part of the state, and this comes up to me more than once since our last meeting. And I actually turned over one of the requests that I had to Cheryl, so that the person that was, this is from the Minocqua area, was very concerned with their lake association in this issue. And so Cheryl was very kind in helping me get it back to a liaison. So know that we are all concerned with this and are working on this in however we can, and agree with what Chair Smith has said. And thank you for your consistent work and vigilance.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, hearing none. Thank you, Jeff.
Thank you.
Our next appearance is Will Peasley, Black River Falls, representing the Farmers Union and talking about elk property damage. Will, are you with us?
Yes, I am. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you loud and clear.
Okay. My name is Will Peasley. I appreciate the opportunity to speak this morning. I testified before this board. It would have been May of 2021 when an update to the elk management plan was first presented. At that point, I was talking about a theoretical concern for our small organic dairy farm. We milk about 60 cows. We'd consistently had 5 to 6 elk on our land in our crop fields. In 2021, that plan was not approved by this board. And I think part of the reasoning was there wasn't enough development of where these elk are going to be, how damage is going to be addressed. And recently, I sit in a different position. As of the end of 2024, we've had 30 elk on our farm fields, half of my dairy herd size, that are continuously grazing. Last winter was the perfectly wrong example in that as grass was growing in February due to the warmth, I had a herd of animals that were chewing it down to nothing. Just as a grazer within the organic system, it was detrimental to our crop. The current, we'll say, wildlife damage that I believe you had recently reviewed and done a final approval in September of 2024, it doesn't address my perennial organic crop in a way that adequately compensates us. If I plant an alfalfa plant, then I'm anticipating 5 years of production. And if the stand isn't there due to elk damage, I have to take the crop to harvest, even though if it was winter kill, I would make that management decision that's going to affect 4 years of production and take that crop out, rotate it to something else. There's really big challenges for fair compensation. My initial point from 2021 is we can't update an elk management plan and not address damage. This is a different scope than deer damage, which weren't brought here into the state. A few, I would just say, main points that I want to communicate to this board is there's a current resolution coming from our county that's asking for additional help for agricultural damage. Where the elk are today is across the Black River. It's not in the state forest. It's not where the program was designed to house and to keep these wild animals. they've moved into agricultural areas. And there's significant reproductions. Then the next piece is at the Farmers Union, we'll say annual meeting, they changed policy and they're requesting representation on the elk advisory committee. I would respectfully ask this board to have the conversation so that more farmers can be part of the conversations. I attended the last elk advisory committee meeting, and it was, in my opinion, very lackadaisical when it comes to damage. That's not part of their decision making as far as elk. The final piece I want to end with is our farm was issued an agricultural shooting permit for one elk. I believe that's the first egg damage shooting permit in the state from 2024. I've already had conversations with DNR staff, and it's been very well indicated that they're going to approach that differently next year. What that communicates to me is it's going to be harder to accomplish. And what I would like to bring to this board is, as different proposals, recommendations come from DNR staff, it's not necessarily from great dialogue with the community or Jackson County that's being affected. I think there's some bias in that, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's updated recommendations that put parameters that farmers with $1,000 of damage per state statute can apply for an egg shooting permit for deer, and likewise elk within that program. I would really hope that you can affirm and read as that stuff comes in, that they don't take that opportunity away. I'm concerned for my neighbors in that regard.
Will, I appreciate your testimony. You're well over your 3 minutes. I think we've heard a couple of concluding remarks, sort of summarizing what you're asking for. Is there anything here at the end you can close with that we should hear before we end this?
My simple request, and I don't know the process how Farmers Union how they can gain representation on that elk advisory committee, but I'm asking this board for to help in the dialogue, better conversations, and I think more farmer representation needs to be a part of that.
Okay, I appreciate that. You're on record requesting that, and I can bring you back to the board approval of the elk plan. Egg damage was a work in progress at the time. There was some progress made, and there was some additional work that staff intended to do on the elk damage, kind of recognizing that it is unique and it is special. And by your comments, you're in touch with staff, and hopefully we'll see some progress on that. Your testimony is noted. Thank you. Any questions from the board?
I just want to
Marcy.
Thank you for testifying, Will. I just wanted to ask, when we looked at the updated plan and the variety of organizations and entities that were involved in the Jackson County level, like Bill said, like Chairman Smith said, the recognition was there about damage, and much of it had to do with deterrence. And I just curious, and I'm not necessarily saying this had to happen, but I just wondered if you and your neighbors had been offered the deterrent methods as well, beyond the one tag.
Yes. So we knew that there was a problem at Christmas time when there was a herd of 25. They will say resided on our farm over the winter months, grazing with it. They did set up a trap. They caught 14, relocated them 10 miles, and in less than 5 months they were back on my farm. So what it shows to me is that they wanted to catch them to recollar them for their scientific we'll say studies and putting in the implants so that they can track birds that way. I don't think it was a real solution that helped my farm, because they trapped them in February, and in August they ate 10 acres of organic corn. And then over the winter, I lost a hay crop there was still forage out there, but it was a lot of weeds. It wasn't the plant or the crops that I planted. The biggest concern I have right now, I work off my farm as an insurance agent. I work with a lot of farms. Within organic, we have to maintain our fencing, and I myself, two other neighbors have had elk that have in the middle of the night taking out perimeter fencing when I have 60 animals and live on a state highway. I need to have a shooting permit to protect from the worst case scenario. They can't be within a pasture scenario where they're taking out active perimeter fencing.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I'll just
Rachel, go ahead.
comment and thank you, Will, for providing your public testimony and can echo your concerns of these unintended consequences of the elk in your area. And as a grazer, I can't imagine, and other farmers can't imagine dealing with some of the issues that you're dealing with. So I definitely think fair compensation for the damage should be addressed. Yeah, and having perimeter fence taken out when you're on a state highway. And I guess, yeah, from an insurance standpoint, you know, the liability risks of that. So, yeah, thank you very much for speaking to this, and I'm happy to assist in any way.
Other comments from the board? Questions? Will, my advice is keep working with staff on this, keep communicating your issues and the impacts, and keep looking for solutions. That's a broad expectation from the board in terms of the damage, and payments were part of the problem, and the unique nature and size of the elk and their ability to travel great distances was also a part of the problem. And I remember your testimony from back in 2021 as well about your organic farming and grazing. So again, continue working with staff on it, and I wish you well. And if you feel like you need to come and talk to the board, we're always here for that. Appreciate your testimony. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that's it for open forum. We'll move on to item 6, informational items. Item 6A, the Southwest Wisconsin CWD Deer and Predator Research Study Results. Dr. Daniel Storm, Ungulate Research Scientist, Office of Applied Science. Welcome,
morning.
Dan.
Hi, good morning, Chair Smith and the board and Deputy Secretary Little. My name is Dan Storm. I'm the Deer Research Scientist for the state of Wisconsin, and I'm a part of the Office of Applied Science, which is within the Division of Fish, Wildlife, and Parks. And so our charge is to provide science-based information to aid managers and decision makers. So I'm excited to be here to share with you some results from our study in which we tried to tackle this thorny problem of the impact of chronic wasting disease on deer populations. So just setting the stage a little bit here. So chronic wasting disease was first detected in a deer harvested in 2001. Fast forward to today, it's now been detected in wild deer in at least 48 counties in the state. CWD prevalence can vary quite a bit, but in our highest prevalence areas, we've seen prevalence in females, adult females, as high as 44% and as high as 55% in adult bucks. So the natural question here with this, the situation we find ourselves in with growing distribution of CWD, worsening prevalence, what is the upshot here for the deer population? Now, the primary point of interest with regard to how CWD is going to affect deer populations is primarily going to be through the extent to which CWD reduces the survival of adult female deer because adult female deer survival is what mostly drives deer populations. There's other factors that you must consider as well, which we did, recruitment and harvest and such. So that's kind of our general situation. I want to talk about just 1,000-foot level study approach here. So our approach to studying this issue was to collar a large number of deer. When we collared them initially, we took a sample, which allowed for us to test for CWD at capture. Then we follow these individuals through time and determine what happens to them, whether they, when they die, how they die, et cetera. And then we get another CWD sample at death. With this information and with combining that information with some pretty advanced statistical modeling, we're able to estimate the survival rate, the annual survival rate of deer as a function of chronic wasting disease. So basically comparing the annual survival rate of deer that did have CWD versus deer that did not. And again, from a population growth standpoint, we're most focused on or most interested in that of adult females. So we can take that information, the survival rates of our infected females, uninfected females, then the prevalence of CWD in the population and recruitment, and we can put that into a population model, which allows us to show how population growth changes with changing chronic wasting disease prevalence. So that's what I'm going to be showing you here today. So first I got to step back and acknowledge some really important collaborators. First and foremost, I want to acknowledge Dr. Dan Walsh. He was formerly at the USGS National Wildlife Health Center here in Madison. He's now moved on to the USGS Montana Cooperative Wildlife Research Unit, but he's been instrumental in the development of these statistical methods that allowed us to do our work. So I just need to acknowledge those folks. So we began our deer capture in January of 2017, and we caught deer each winter through March of 2020, and we've been monitoring deer continually since. We still have deer with functioning collars to this day. This work was centered in northern Iowa County on almost exclusively private land. So we had incredible generous support from hundreds of landowners who allowed us to do our work on their land, and without which we could absolutely not have done this study. Also important were the literally thousands of volunteers that helped us with our fawn capture and collaring effort. You need lots of people. Just the labor involved in catching fawns requires more labor than we can hire. So we had a lot of volunteers helping with that, which has the added benefit of great public outreach. And then lastly, we did have a pretty sizable seasonal staff to help us do our deer capture and monitoring. Okay, a little bit about how do we get our hands on these deer and what do we do with them? So what you see here is the aftermath of a net drop. So we have these contraptions. We attract deer to them. When they're there, we will drop this net. The deer will become entangled. We'll physically restrain them, and then we'll chemically immobilize them. Then we'll disentangle them and move on. And so then we have this deer that's immobilized, and we're monitoring its health status, and we're doing a bunch of measurements, and then we're putting that collar. You can see that technician's holding a collar. That's a GPS collar. So that provides GPS fixes on the individual, so we can know where this animal is. And crucially here, we've got this rectal biopsy, and that's that bit that allows us to get the CWD test before it's dead, the live test. Now, when the deer dies, the collars will tell us that. They give us an alert, a text alert, an email alert, and we know where that happened. That allows us to commence a mortality investigation. Oftentimes, those are very extensive. It can be a multi-page report from a veterinary pathologist even. So we get a lot of information on those deaths. Okay, so going on to now our results. I talked about how we did it. Now I'm going to talk about what we found. In our study, we collared over 1,000 deer. We collared 766 deer with the GPS collars and over 300 newborn fawns. These are the locations of the harvest, of the captures. And I guess the main point here is this was kind of is in northern Iowa County and a little bit into Grant and Dane, centered on Dodgeville and between Highway 18 and the Wisconsin River and Highway 14. So this is that sort of endemic CWD prevalence area in which we were working. Okay. Now I'm getting to the sort of main results here of this project that I'm talking about today. So first I'm going to show you the annual adult deer survival for bucks and does that did not have CWD. Okay, so uninfected annual survival of females was over 80%, and for bucks it was almost 70%. So for a rural hunted population, those are very high survival rates. So now we're going to contrast that with the deer that had CWD, and we see that indeed CWD has a drastic effect on deer survival. Female survival is half of what it is. Infected female survival is half of the survival of an uninfected deer, and male survival is lower still. So I mentioned how we take the survival information and prevalence and recruitment information, we put this into a population model that allows us to see population growth across a gradient of prevalence. So I'm going to show you that plot, and I'm going to kind of walk you through it. Okay, so what you see here on the vertical axis, that is population change or population growth. That horizontal dashed line, that's at 1. That means the population is stable. You're taking this year's population times 1 is next year's population. That's a population that's stable. If it's more than 1, that's a population that's growing. If it's less than 1, that's a population that's declining. And what we see is that chronic wasting disease, through its mortality effect on adult females, it immediately chips away at the population growth potential of a deer herd. But at low prevalences, we still have really robust herd growth potential. It is that one important point is where that line, so that line, that solid line with the gray band around it, that shows you the relationship that we quantify between prevalence and population growth rate. That's what I say is it's declining. So as prevalence increases, population growth rate decreases, and it crosses that threshold, if you will, of 1 at about 29% prevalence, meaning when you're in the 30% prevalence plus area, that is where you would expect that CWD is causing a population decline. And as I think a lot of you know, there are areas in Wisconsin that have those prevalence levels. So I'm going to conclude here, just kind of summarizing things. CWD does substantially reduce deer survival and suppresses deer population growth rate. Where CWD prevalence is high, deer populations are likely declining. There's always local factors at play. There's some areas that are going to have higher recruitment or lower recruitment, higher harvest rates and lower. So there's always going to be some variation in the actual outcomes. What I showed you is our kind of general expectation based on our data and our modeling. In those high prevalence areas, further population declines are likely. And, if you think about where we have the highest CWD prevalence in the southwest part of the state, and that's where we're going to be seeing these impacts currently and have been seeing them. We've got CWD a lot more areas than that. And if prevalence continues to grow, the impacts of the disease are going to spread as well. Thank you for your time. That is what I have. And I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Are there questions from the board? Robin, go ahead. And then Doug.
This is really great information and a lot to comprehend for people who don't regularly follow statistical methods and population growth of animals. But can I just ask some kind of basic questions?
Absolutely.
So in this area where you looked at, how did you account, were there any collared deer that were hunted?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Yes.
So that was all taken into
Yes.
account. Okay.
Yes.
And then as you have higher prevalence of CWD, you're going to see this population decline. Is there any correlation with the size, the overall size of the herd? Because it seems like in this area that you studied, there's a lot of deer. And so some might argue there's too many deer. So is there any natural balance that's going to be taking place here? And is the concern that in areas where there are less significant size of herds, that you're still going to see this reduction where you don't want to see the reduction?
Yeah, so to take that, the first part of like Southwest Wisconsin, where, as you said, there have always been a lot of deer. It's, I mean, the landscape is like it was designed in a lab for deer. It's just absolutely perfect deer habitat. And what happens with animal populations is the more of them that there are, the greater the competition for resources. And that leads to feedback mechanisms like reduced pregnancy rates, survival of offspring, that sort of stuff. So it does relate to that. And conversely, as populations decline and there are more resources for the individuals that are remaining, those that are left over have an ability to increase their pregnancy rates. Like, in fact, fawns especially will be more likely to breed, like, because a fawn can get bred at 6 months old and give birth on her first birthday. So the rates of which that happen will increase as you have a lower population. So there are these inherent sort of feedback mechanisms in deer populations that kind of are related to what we see in terms of our deer numbers. I think, and why I mentioned that too, is I think that compensating ability will help buffer the deer populations against declines at some point. Because at some point when there's fewer deer, those that are left are going to be reproducing more, and that's going to buffer them against the effects of CWD. And you see in Western deer populations that have had been affected by CWD for longer, and those populations are severely affected, but we haven't seen any like go extinct or get extirpated. That has not happened, and we don't really expect that to happen because of these compensating mechanisms. So you asked about the northern.
If this is as much as, I shouldn't say as much of a concern, but what are the difference in concerns for areas where there is a smaller deer population to begin with? Some of the new CWD testing areas that we found some positives, like how does this relate? Do you expect to see that same percentage?
Not necessarily. I mean, it really is going to depend on, a lot of it's going to depend on recruitment. How many new deer are we adding every year? Because that's what is always saving you from the mortality. How to translate these to the like very different landscapes, very different contexts in the north is, I don't know. I don't want to try to go there too much because I do think there's a lot of differences. I think also in these, like a northern deer herd is also going to have a lot of differences in their like the CWD dynamics themselves, the transmission dynamics, because there's fewer deer. So maybe there's opportunity for less contact, but are there factors like baiting and feeding that are drawing them together? I mean, the differences are a lot. So it would take a lot of sussing out to kind of think through that.
Thank you.
Okay. Doug, question?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. So my questions were similar, but the 30% prevalence criteria, I guess the same angle is necessarily not going to go too far north. Right now, it certainly isn't. So how do we figure out how far north does the 30% prevalence come right now? I mean,
how far north? I mean, as far as I know, I mean, our surveillance areas that would show a prevalence of that magnitude, those are in the Southwest Wisconsin counties for now. But what happens with CWD is it grows in prevalence. So that's today. In the future, you don't do anything different where we have CWD, it's going to get established and it's going to increase in prevalence because that's what it always happens. So there's going to be higher prevalence areas in the future.
Yeah. Another one, Chair.
Go ahead.
So on the uninfected and infected survival rates, those male data are adults.
Correct.
So what did we find in the juveniles?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we studied that as well. And those fawn survival rates are kind of typical kind of average. They're about 50% from birth to 1 year of age. 50%, maybe a little bit less, depending on the year. That's well within sort of norm. And a deer population can grow very rapidly with that sort of fawn survival rates.
And then you mentioned western deer populations showing ability. I think what you were saying is they're beginning to adapt to the survival issues. When you say western deer populations, do you mean western states?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm sorry I didn't clarify that. I mean like Wyoming,
Yeah.
Colorado. Yeah.
All right, thank you.
Want to check in with Patty. Patty, I don't want to gloss over you. Do you have any questions on this topic?
I feel smarter, for one thing. I really learned a lot about this topic. I appreciate it. It's a lot to absorb, looking at it purely from the scientific perspective. But it's like, you hear about it. What was the participant in people that, actually, moving forward with this topic that participated in giving samples like this hunting season? Do we know exactly where that lies? And then how predictability can be based on those numbers?
Do you mean from our hunter surveillance? Like our general hunter CWD surveillance? I don't know. I don't know. If it's okay, Chair, I'd invite Jasmine Batten up to answer that question.
Sure.
Thank you.
Come on up, Jasmine. Welcome to the party.
Good morning. Thank you, Chair Smith, Deputy Director Little, and members of the board. I'm Jasmine Batten. I'm the Wildlife Health Supervisor, so I'm here to answer kind of the wildlife management side of things. Could you repeat the question for me, please?
So just to de-word it a little bit, just, the predictability based on what you know and based on what we know from people that's put in samples, and then figuring it out, moving forward so that, good plans can be made for prevention. What's that look like?
Sure. Our surveillance this year was pretty similar to last year. So in terms of predictability, what we've seen in the study area that Dr. Storm talked about and other counties in that area with high prevalence, we had a lot of positives. In the northern part of the state, we did have a few areas with new detections. So I think that really kind of the surveillance we do highlights that different in gradient of CWD and that take-home point that the disease is not uniformly distributed across the state at this point in time. In fact, even in a given county, that prevalence can be really site-specific. So I don't know if that really answers your questions, but when we think about kind of sampling and why we're doing sampling, there's a lot of different reasons that we're doing it for our hunters. It's to give them that assurance for many of them that their deer is not positive. When we're talking about sampling in our areas where we haven't detected the disease or it's lower prevalence, our goals are more to find it early and understand the status of it. Fortunately, these high prevalence areas, sampling from a scientific point really is kind of monitoring those effects over time.
Well, I think when we look at, numbers of licenses and everything, how this looks like 20 years from now, we can see the difference from 20 years past, but now we look 20 years to the future. Do you guys work on a long-term plan thinking about that there? Or am I just way off in crazy land right now?
No, absolutely. Long-term thinking is important. Dan can talk to this more, but there's a lot of complicated dynamics. It's not just the disease that is possibly impacting deer populations, even harvest numbers. We've got the complication of declining hunters over time. I think CWD is a very long-term game, and that's one of the big challenges. The interventions that we have and the tools that we have really are needed to be applied long-term, and I think it's hard for a lot of people to see long-term. So certainly that long-term vision in terms of hunter behavior and patterns are absolutely part of the considerations. But unfortunately with CWD, there are no easy answers, and there's not just one answer. One thing we do know is that in order to affect prevalence over time or spread over time, it takes a multifaceted solution. So you really have to tackle it from multiple risk factors. There's not one silver bullet, unfortunately, that can change the future of prevalence over time.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Other questions from the board?
Uh,
Go ahead, Rachel.
Just some kind of basic information questions, but I also was curious, kind of related on Patty's, if you guys have a map showing that trajectory over time of, throughout all the counties, the new hotspots, if that exists, it would be
Absolutely.
interesting to see.
So, yeah, our wildlife health group on the DNR website, I mean, I think it's fair to say that the Wisconsin DNR is the best website in terms of availability, the transparency, and user friendliness of CWD data. There is an interactive map where you can see the locations of positives and tests, like CWD positives and tests at a section or township level. It's a fully interactive map. And then within certain areas in Wisconsin, we've got these monitoring areas in which we actually go to that step of calculating prevalence and showing those we call it time series of CWD prevalence. And so we've got a number of those. And again, you can go to the website, click around and click on that area and here's how the prevalence has changed over time. So we've got for that, if anyone's interested in that sort of data, we've got that covered really well. Yeah.
Well, I figured you did.
Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that resource. And then I just had a couple kind of just basic questions. If there's any consideration with the neurological impact of the disease and the increase of likeliness to be, hunted or hit by cars, if that is accounted for at all, and then and if it's passed from does to fawns or not. And then we just had the discussion with the elk, if you've seen it in any of the Wisconsin elk population.
Okay, so I'll take last first. We've not detected it in elk. In Wisconsin. In other states, in Colorado and Wyoming, they have detected CWD in elk. In other states beyond just those two as well. In terms of the in utero infection or the infection to offspring, I think, yes, it's been observed, but it's not like a common thing. But you've got an infected mom and then you've got baby living with her and licking each other every day there's definitely a higher likelihood that fawn will eventually become infected, if maybe not a certainty, but a higher likelihood for sure. And then, sorry, please remind me of
the neurological
the deaths
impact.
stuff. Yeah. So in terms of is that accounted for? Yes, because when I showed you survival, the complement of that is mortality, and the mortality is from a bunch of different sources. And so what we see for uninfected deer, they die of the things that we just expect that kill deer in a rural farmland. So number one, hunting by far, and then vehicle collisions, and then a smattering of other things. And with CWD positive deer, especially females, that sort of picture of what are they dying from is quite different. It's fundamentally different, principally because for female deer, over 50% of the deaths are what we had attributed to basically, quote unquote, dying of CWD, end stage disease, where if you're familiar, they call it wasting, because they waste away, they become emaciated. And so we see that a lot with these infected females. The course of infection is a long one, can be 18 months from infection to death. And they're kind of cruising along fine, and then they drop off a cliff and they'll lose tremendous amount of condition in a very short time. And they basically die of starvation. But any deer can die of starvation, right? If there's nutritional limitations. But these are deer that are dying of starvation in June, July, and October and such, where there is no nutritional limitations. It's the disease itself causing that. So, yes.
And is it that I guess I'm trying to think of the mode of action of that disease. So what makes it so they're not eating, or just what is actually killing them?
Yeah, like why are they losing weight despite there being all sorts of food around? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, we've had these deer have a full stomach sometimes, so there must be, I assume there's a reduced rate of food consumption, some level has to be. Perhaps they're capacity to digest is compromised, I'd guess. We do, the other thing with these end stage deer is they often also have a bacterial infection, and sometimes that's a gastrointestinal infection. It's obviously not helpful for digestion. So, you know, it's a neurological disease that has all these cascading effects on the, you know, physiology of the deer going down.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Marcy?
Hi, thanks. And appreciate the briefing as always with the staff. But first, a quick one because I have to stand corrected. The live test for CWD, is there additional research going on for that? Just your image alone indicates not everybody's going to want to live test that way, but is there more research going on for live testing?
So the testing thing is interesting because it's a mix of what is the tissue you're using, what's the assay that you're using. And so we use the rectal biopsy, which doesn't look all that pleasant. But I can assure you that there are no complications. That heals so fast. We just like literally never saw a complication with that. It sure doesn't seem comfortable. We do things to manage the pain
Right,
and
yeah,
stuff. Anyway.
yeah.
There's emerging development of assays that are more sensitive that can, and you know, there's been research that if you take a ear punch and you can get detection of, you can detect CWD that way, but there's the issue of, you know, what's the purpose of that test and what's the sensitivity? And I think there's just a lot more development that needs to be done.
Okay.
And
Yeah, I'm
eventually-
just curious if there is additional.
Absolutely.
Okay,
Yeah,
great.
sorry, yeah.
Because I mean, we've had updates before where we thought, well, why can't we do a saliva test while they're still alive? And that was kind of ruled out like, nope, the saliva test isn't gonna work. So this, you look at this and you think, why can't we go find scat samples? And if there's any tissue on there at all, be able to.
And CWD has been detected in scat. That's a more difficult assay to accomplish, but the assay development has been tremendous in the last 5-10 years. And so,
Okay,
yeah.
good to hear. Good to hear. Okay, so the objectives of the study, sorry, Chair, I'm just gonna
Go
keep
ahead.
rolling. The estimated survival, and you mentioned the average age of a deer that is not infected or is not impacted by these other mortalities is how many years? 7? 5 to 7?
No, I mean, I don't know offhand, to be honest with you. I don't know.
But was part of the study to see if their life is ending early?
Well, yes, and it does end early, yeah.
Okay, thank you. And so when we look, I mean, and again, back to one of the specifics in my briefing was we looked at one of those highest rates township in Richland County. And I can't remember what the exact percentage was, but it was
Yeah.
high.
I don't recall exactly either, but it was high, you know, high.
Yeah. So if we look at that and we're still seeing the herd numbers in southwestern Wisconsin so high, maybe this is repeating the question, but you know, 20 years ago, there was a concern, oh, we're going to lose all the deer. Now you can take away from this study, okay, we're not losing all the deer, but we're seeing them at a younger age with infection. So our messaging on when testing should happen may need to change, or at least be understood by the public. And that all of these impacts coming together is basically going to need monitoring, not only for the herd, but for the public in general.
Yeah, I think that's.
Okay. Because one of my concerns is, and it's been repeated in the past, is you know, that we had all this attention 20 years ago and now we don't don't necessarily have the concerns, convincing people to even test is a bit of a challenge. And the importance of this seems to be on how our understanding is changing. You know, like where we used to say we're testing the big bucks, the older deer, and now we're finding it in fawns or juveniles. That's kind of the point of the importance of these kind of research projects, correct?
Yeah, that's part of it. I think, and then just having, I think, I would say what's the important point of this research is to have everybody on the same page with what's happening with CWD and our deer populations. There are a lot of hunters and landowners who have recognized in more recent times that, yeah, I'm seeing fewer deer, I'm seeing more carcasses in landscape. I think it's CWD, but you know, there's other plausible things, and other folks have had other hypotheses about why they're seeing what they're seeing. I think the value of this research is we're showing it is CWD. You should expect fewer deer in these high prevalence areas. They're not going to go extinct, I don't believe. There are going to be fewer of them. Too few is this, or you know, there's ultimately a value judgment as to whether it's too few or whatever, but fewer than what we have now.
Yeah. Well, I think, like Jasmine said, the multifaceted is so crucial. And Rachel, there are literally people that, you know, we've had in previous conversations from the health department where, again, the concern seems to come, or I know the concern comes is when there's a mutation or when something changes, and then everybody looks at it like, oh my God, why didn't you know? But I think the support for studies like this and research like this is exactly that for one, you're monitoring, for two, you're learning a lot. And as we talked about at the end of my briefing, is how much more can come from this, that now we have this really good data on a significant area and how much we can learn from that in other aspects. So not necessarily a question, but encouraging the continued support of good science and research.
Other questions, comments? Robin?
So, I'd like to view this as like phase 1 of a study. Is there a phase 2? Like where do your research efforts take you from here?
I mean, with the data we've collected already, we've done a lot of work so far. We've got a lot more work just with our data. We're continually making progress. In 2 months from now, we'll have accomplished more. We'll learn more. It's just, it is a continual progress. So there isn't like, okay, I would say there's not like, okay, we're going to gear up for phase 2 or whatever. We're just continuing with these analyses and these data. And I mean, yeah, like I said, we still have deer on air. So I mean, continuing to collect data as well.
But you're not adding new collars.
We're not adding new collars.
Other questions?
I'll just do one more quick one. So I'm interested about the technology, the collars.
Yeah.
So can you detect when an animal starts to show significant weight loss?
Ah, great question. We have a project that is essentially exactly that. And we have a postdoc research.
You didn't want me to ask that either.
We've got a postdoctoral researcher at UW-Madison, and she was on our acknowledgement slide. She is using the GPS data because that is high quality. It's like you're walking around and you're doing that, right? So we have that, and we can program that to get different fix rates. So what she's doing, not weight loss, because you can't detect weight loss remotely, but she is trying to determine when can you detect behavior changes or movement behavior changes. And yeah, and that's exciting stuff. And she's made a lot of great progress. And that's what there's I could come, there's a lot more of that really cool stuff coming from this research that's imminent, I would say. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you.
Marcy?
And to follow up on that, coming from the research, again, is the information to the public. Like, we don't have the earn a buck anymore, but we have landowners who are recognizing the importance of controlling the doe population as well.
Yeah, we do. Yeah.
Messages to the public.
I think that's important. our doe harvest has really dropped. And but that's important for disease management. It's important for deer management. And so to support that, it's important.
Any other questions from the board? I have one for you, Dan, right at the end. You've made the point and have a very solid conclusion that CWD has an impact on deer mortality, increases it, and at some point, the mortality that is accelerated by CWD outpaces the recruitment in the herd and the population goes down. And you've got that narrowed down to around 30% in this particular location. Very intuitive information. I mean, it kind of follows what a person would think from a lay perspective, common sense. Have you come across anything in your research that I would call an aha moment where you found something that is going to inform our management of deer or change our management of deer because of that? Or are we not there yet?
I'm not sure I've had an aha moment quite like that. I mean, this is such a sticky, thorny issue. It's probably not going to come in aha moments. It's going to come in a bunch of, I don't know how to put it, but it's going to come in a lot of effort by a lot of people, a lot of different areas, not only this population ecology stuff, but the disease transmission information, and probably most importantly, the sociological information. How do we effectively manage the disease, which is, it's human hunter management. Yeah. So I don't know if I have a aha moment for you, unfortunately, but.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Any last questions? Okay. Thank you, Dan. You got a boatload of data there and there's a lot of interesting stuff in it. Appreciate the briefing. Next item on the agenda is 6B, Deer Management Unit Review Update. Jeff Pritzel, Deer Program Specialist, Bureau of Wildlife Management. Welcome, Jeff.
Thank you. Yeah, good morning, Chair Smith and Deputy Secretary Little and members of the board. My name is Jeff Pritzel. I'm the Deer Program Specialist, and I'm happy to be with you this morning to bring to you an update on the work we've been involved with since this board authorized us to take out to the public a deer management unit review. For about 50 years, from the 1960s until 2013, the department did monitor both deer and deer harvest by habitat-based deer management units. In 2014, we switched to a county-based system primarily to facilitate the creation of county deer advisory councils, and also to follow up on some other work that acknowledged that those 77 deer management units you see on the left map had evolved into over 130 deer management units over time, and that had gotten to be too many and too small of deer management units. And so the county-based system both facilitated the creation of the advisory councils as well as returned to a smaller number of larger deer management units. So since we were given the opportunity to take this to the public in August, I want to quickly share with you what we've been up to. Shortly after that board meeting, we reached out to the Conservation Congress as well as the tribes across Wisconsin via our tribal liaison, and the Congress by virtue of their participation and leadership on all of the county deer advisory councils, just to give them a heads up that this was coming and invite them to work with local wildlife biologists on any interest they had in potential boundary review or adjustments in their area. I should point out that we were focused in this review on the northern forest and the central forest zones in the state, as well as metropolitan subunits. The farmland units were not part of this review. Our first formal step was to convene our state DNR Deer Advisory Committee to make an initial preliminary recommendation on what a unit boundary change might look like. And that was informed by prior work with our historical deer management units, as well as some of the input we had gotten in the an earlier audit that I referenced, that our system had developed too many deer management units as we were in the early 2000s. We offered an online briefing to all CDAC members in October, which we also invited the public to attend by virtual, putting it on our public meetings and putting it out as a news release shared with outdoor media. And so we, had a chance to have the discussion and kind of work through the initial steps. In association with that, we had an online survey that the public was invited to participate in terms of the concept of support or lack of support for moving to a habitat-based deer management unit system. We circled back specifically with the Ojibwe tribes in recognition of their responsibility of co-management of the resource in the ceded territory and how any changes, may impact or be of interest to them and create an opportunity for those discussions. And we had 4 open houses in the month of November prior to the gun season. 3 of those were in person in the communities of Woodruff and Cable in the north, Adams in Adams County in the Central Forest. And then we also offered an online virtual open house. We had about 80 people participate in that online open house. And then the most recent thing, we had the formal comment period associated with the rule change that was open December 9th through January 10th, kind of culminating with a public hearing that we held online on January 8th. We had again about 80 people participating online from the public during that hearing. And we hope to be back again next month in front of you with an actual formal rule as a result of the work we've been doing since that time. This is just a quick summary of the input that we received through the public comment period of the rule, just showing that we've had overwhelming support in terms of the concept. Some of the comments we received were specific to the northern forest, some were specific to the central forest, others were in general. And so we broke those out. And so we see both in the northern forest and in general, comments ran about 80% in favor of the proposed change. In the central forest, it was a little bit closer, but still a majority in favor of. I'll show specifically what those differences were in just a moment. And then another part of the rule change we hope to bring to you next month specifically references the county deer advisory councils, because first and foremost, the question that comes on most people's mind is, should we go forward with an adjustment to the boundaries of the units which no longer align with county boundaries? What does that look like for the county deer advisory councils? And that is really yet to be determined. We look forward to working collaboratively with the Conservation Congress on that, because they work with and really facilitate those advisory council meetings. And we recognize that at this point in time, the Congress's official position is to support the current county-based unit and CDAC system. And as we work forward or move forward in those discussions, should the units change, our recommendation in the rule is to just simply make a wording change that would take the word county out, replace that with citizen. And that doesn't mandate a change. Should we, in working with the Congress, see that the county-based advisory councils continue to function well, that could continue. However, we also could discover that maybe there's another option and a better option. And some of those ideas actually came up organically during the open house to potentially adjust even the administrative boundaries of the councils. And so we would ask that the wording might change to just allow that flexibility in the future should we discover again, collaboratively, that there might be a better or a different way to approach this. So now just to show you the maps, the initial preliminary map that we rolled out back in October publicly had 25 new habitat-based deer management units in the northern forest. That also results in an adjustment of the northern forest boundary with the central farmland to meet some of those historic habitat-based lines. And then in the central forest, the changes really happened in the east, southeast portion of the central forest, where Wood, Adams, Juneau, and Monroe County, working with their CDECs, had requested a shift of reducing the forest unit in their counties and expanding the farmland. And in Adams County, fully removing Adams County from the central forest unit. And that action drove or received most of that attention as it relates to where we saw a little bit closer for and against, input as it relates to the change. And then finally, those metro subunits that I mentioned, an expansion of the metro subunit in Rock County, as well as Racine and Kenosha, and then in Waukesha and Washington County, a full expansion to put the entire county in the subunit, a little expansion in Sheboygan County, and actually a little reduction of the metro subunit in Manitowoc County. Now, considering the input we received in the open houses, one area drew attention of potentially a different approach to the deer management units. These units that you see in this map really were informed by the historic deer management units we had prior to 2014, with one exception up in Bayfield County. But this area that I just highlighted in the red square drew more concern about the orientation of those units, especially the north-south orientation. And it was an area where the local biologists, were kind of wrestling with what the best option was. And then that showed up in public input. And then we had one other small area that we were aware of interest in change, and that is in the zone boundary in Marinette County. But we initially rolled it out in a status quo situation to receive input and see if the support was there for the change that we had been picking up through the advisory council. So indeed, we did make some changes in reference to that. And so I'll just quickly share that area with the larger red box. We did add a deer management unit and reorient some of them to meet some of the input that we had. We also adjusted the boundary of the zone in Marinette County, and then brought this map forward for feedback through the public comment period and the rule hearing in last month, and no adjustments to the central forest boundary or the metro subunits. So that's where we're at this point in time, and I'd be happy to take any questions or comments.
Questions from the board? Doug?
Thanks, Chair. Hey, Jeff. So I might have missed it. What's the driver behind the change? Is it DNR's thoughts that we want to go back to more smaller units than the county approach?
Yeah, no, thank you, Doug. And I think I've mentioned, if I wasn't clear on it, since the establishment of the county-based system, we had been getting feedback in the northern part of the state, primarily through the CDAC, the advisory council meetings themselves, expressing an interest in returning to some version of a habitat-based unit system. And so when we came through our 3-year cycle of boundary reviews, which we were compelled to do through administrative code, we saw this as an opportunity to acknowledge that feedback we've been getting.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Marcy?
Thanks, Jeff. So I listened in on the public hearing and agree in general support. The one concern I had was that people talked about the need to increase the population in the north. And we've heard it over and over again that people are disappointed, or hunters can be disappointed in certain areas in the north. And I think it's important that on this change of what the overall look will be, as far as it does not necessarily increase the deer herd, right? There's all of those other factors that need to be considered on where the deer herd stands in the north.
Yeah, that's correct, Marcy. And I would say even some of the positive supportive comments we got through the multiple venues would be couched with, this is a great first step, but in and of itself is not going to change the situation as it relates to, deer density or deer population trends. What it does do really is going to allow, or could allow, the allocation of antlerless permits in the future in a more prescriptive way that would recognize, these units would recognize areas that are less productive, and we anticipate more public interest in seeing conservative antlerless permit allocations, as opposed to other areas that have demonstrated an ability to sustainably, carry higher deer numbers and support higher deer harvest. And that's really the challenge that those CDACs in the north were dealing with and expressing, in that they were caught in the middle within their county, they were seeing both ends of the spectrum. And so by going to a habitat-based unit system, it would allow the CDACs to recognize that, all right, we can capture the public input that says, be conservative over here while providing opportunity in other areas. So being conservative, we've got a long history of being very conservative with permit allocation. We have mixed results as to the cause and effect of whether that in and of itself will cause an increase in the deer population. But of course, that is the expectation, and the hope is that these areas or units that would be identified as lower production, would result in fewer antlerless permit allocations with the opportunity for potential herd growth. Doesn't mean that herd growth will happen, but it creates the window of opportunity.
Okay. And I asked in August and just checking, no way we can get at that private-public issue in this process, in this portion of the process.
Yeah, as we were looking at the aspects of administrative code that we wanted to put on the table for this review and consider, that feature or aspect of it, it was decided not to make it part of the part of the rule that we were given authority to solicit public comment on. I will say that I do get that voluntarily and through CDAC meetings. And again, like some of the other things, we get both ends of the spectrum. It's probably one of the biggest complaints I do get from hunters is being forced to choose between private and public land. On the other hand, hunters really consider that kind of protecting the public land from, higher permit levels, access is important. And we did hear that from some people that did support the unit change. They would put an asterisk on that to say, as long as you keep the private public land thing intact. Now, we continue to collect data on that. And so we will be able to make informed decisions down the road as to whether or not that aspect is, part of a potential enhancement for, deer numbers in the future.
Okay. Last one,
Go ahead.
the process from here until we get a request for approval in February. Is there another outreach, local level? What's the plan for the next month?
Yeah, thanks. No, I think really the opportunity to be with you today is kind of the heads up for over the next month as we submit the green sheet background memo, and that becomes a public document, and people have the opportunity to review that and be prepared for providing input at next month's meeting. That's the next step in assessing this rule.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Other questions? Robin?
I'm wondering if you want to ask Patty though first. I just don't want to forget about her.
I had her on my
Oh, you
mind.
can't forget about me.
Go ahead, Patty.
No, I don't have any questions at this time.
Okay, thank you. Robin, do you have a question?
Yes, I do. Thank
All
you.
right.
Can you elaborate a little bit more on the central farmland zone and because that was one where there was not as convincing consensus or support. And then you mentioned something about Adams County, and could you just elaborate a little bit more on, because it seems like you're comfortable with the delineations as you presented to us, but it concerns me that the other areas have much higher level of support. And is there more opportunity for conversation in that area, or are you comfortable with the recommendations that you're going to be coming forward with?
Sure. Thanks, Robin, for bringing that up. And yeah, because that does kind of stand out as a little bit different. So again, in the zone as a whole, we had been picking up through advisory council meetings in recent years an interest in changing the boundary, especially in Wood County. We've gotten virtually no pushback at all about the change in Wood County. And then in Juneau and Monroe, it was also recognized that there was a need to kind of enhance harvest in the area between I-94 and 21, which they're making the change. In Adams County, it is a little bit more challenging in as much as there's a bunch of deer in the southern part of the county. There's a bunch of deer in the northern part of the county. And in the middle of the county, the densities aren't quite as high. Probably does reflect a little bit more of the central forest type landscape. But a couple of things to consider are that when we look at the harvest density as is in Adams County, even the forest unit is producing a deer harvest that is close to some of the lower performing farmland units as it is. And the other thing to consider is that a big part of these units is about antlerless permit allocation and ability. And in the last couple of years, even under the forest unit allocation, they are not selling out in antlerless permits on private or public land. So the demand for antlerless permits is being met. And so the perceived threat, if you would, of turning that into the farmland, and it would increase potentially antlerless harvest where they may not desire it in certain areas, would suggest that we wouldn't anticipate to see a great increase in antlerless permit allocation or use necessarily. Now, it would be up to the advisory council to, look at their new landscape and perhaps make some adjustments as it relates to availability of antlerless permits now that the landscape has changed somewhat. But it certainly, as we would expect, it comes from, no matter how you draw the lines, there will always be individuals that find themselves, trying to hunt on areas that are relative to the unit suboptimal and consider, increased opportunity in antlerless harvest as a threat to their potential future. Because their experience hasn't been meeting their expectations as is. So that's understandable, but that's kind of the story where we're at in Adams County.
Thank you.
Other questions? I have a couple. I'd like to comment on your statement about where, I think it came from a question Doug asked about, where did this come from? Is this a push from staff? Is this something that came from somebody or some group publicly? My perspective is this has been a very strong message out of a handful of northern counties for all the reasons you stated, having great difficulty trying to establish an antlerless harvest goal in a county that had a very strong split personality. Very productive lands and ag lands in some parts of the county that had damage problems and deer herd problems, and the rest of the county being very much a large public area with very low deer numbers. And we've heard that from numbers of people over the last few years. But I think really the push has come from the Congress right from the beginning. Not necessarily a position by the Congress as a body, but certainly from some of the CDACs and some of the Congress members. And it has been strong and consistent for the last 4 or 5 years. I've advocated for it a couple of times when we do the annual deer season review and report, and that message hasn't changed. Now, it affects different parts of the state, and respect that there's a lot of other people that need to weigh in on this. But one of the things I wanted to ask you about, Jeff, you mentioned the name change from a county deer advisory council to a citizen deer advisory council to open the door in case some of the CDACs want to try some different arrangements on how to handle the public input process. To me, the pertinent question is, does this in some way indicate a change in the role of the Congress? If it's no longer built around a county versus a citizen group that might have a geographic area that they're providing discussion and input on for deer that doesn't identically represent the county boundaries, does that also indicate a role in the Congress? They've been the lead on this since the beginning, and they've been a very strong factor, I think, in the success and the continuity of those citizen conversations. Could you just kind of comment on why the name change, and does that affect the Congress role in any way?
Sure, yeah, thanks for the opportunity to talk about that, Chair Smith. From a functional standpoint, at least what I would envision, it doesn't change the role of the Congress in as much as each advisory council is chaired by a Congress, delegate.
Right.
And the alternate chair is also a Congress delegate. It does muddy the waters a little bit in as much as those delegates are elected and serve, a county boundary. And if the new units, no longer align with that, but a chair of a CDAC that perhaps is covering 2 units that covers a good portion of their home county, but maybe part of a neighboring county, that changes the identity a little bit, and so that identity of the county and the connection to that, that changes it somewhat, but it's not an unknown in as much as we operated under that system for decades. And there will be, certainly, should this go forward, a pretty heavy lift over the next year or couple of years in terms of public education and outreach to get the hunting community and everyone retuned to their areas of interest. And so that rather than potentially attending a meeting that addresses County X, it's going to be unit, 119 or 118. And so they'll have to adjust, which meeting am I interested in attending or participating in, or the Congress could say, these advisory councils have only had to deal with one management unit, perhaps two in the case of Marinette and Oconto, where it was a split county. But now it could feel a little intimidating that now there's three portions of three different units in my county. How are we going to tackle the process by which we make a recommendation on three different units? And what if my neighboring county comes up with a different recommendation and a shared responsibility? So yeah, that could get a little interesting as to how we navigate that. And I don't pretend to have the answer for that, but I look forward to coming to the table with the Congress to sort that out and what makes the best move going forward. Because I think there are numerous ways we could do that, but the Congress would continue to have the lead on how that works and how that operates with their delegates to carry that on behalf of the public and facilitate that public input.
That was the simple answer I was looking for. Are the Congress reps still going to lead these citizen groups? Okay, I think that's a critical part to our success in the future. The other thing I'd like to mention is that I was there when department staff were posing that question back to the CDAC chairs and saying, well, you want these new boundaries, how are you going to manage it? And the message I got was also a very simple one. It says, get the boundaries right, meaning habitat-based boundaries. Get the boundaries right and we'll figure it out. So they very much are in an open mind in general, and they're looking at alternatives, but they want to try some things. They want to figure some things out. The message I heard is this is a work in progress, and at least a large group of the northern CDAC chairs were comfortable with that. They didn't have the answer, but they wanted to work on it, and they would be part of a system that would work better for them than the current one does. So
I was personally pleased, Chair Smith, in that feedback as well, in that not knowing how that reaction might be, that there wasn't a sense of turf protection in terms of how this goes forward. It was about how can we best serve our hunting public going forward.
Mm-hmm. The other question I would have, one thing I've heard recently from the Congress, I'd ask you your sense of support from the Congress on this thing, because I believe, I think the initiative came originally from some Congress reps that started pushing it, and you put a tremendous amount of work into this and a lot of interaction with people. Do we have the support of the Congress? Because they're vital in making this thing work.
Right. And I appreciate, again, you asking that, because as we all know, the Congress has joint, ability to, make recommendations to this board as the department does. And in some cases, we come to you together in step, as was the case with the bear quotas today. And then sometimes we don't. And the Congress, has its protocols as to how it creates its official positions. And as my understanding is, the official position of the Congress based on past action is support for county-based units and county-based advisory councils, and they have not taken any formal action to change their position on that. So at this point in time, I treat that and I understand that that's their official position. I again look forward to working with them. I've been working with these folks for decades with the hope to help together navigate evolution of our deer program as deer hunting is evolving.
Yeah. I think one other question is really vital here, and it's a question of timing. You've heard some things anecdotally from individuals that said maybe we need a little more time to work on this CDAC or this citizen panel relationship and just figure out how it's going to work before we jump ahead and implement things. We have a decision coming to the board tentatively for February on this. Would you talk a little bit about the timing of that decision, and if people who are advocating for a delay in this, how does that work out?
Sure. So, as you mentioned earlier, we've been hearing about this for a number of years. There was a pretty strong, I think, uptick in interest in seeing this go forward after the 2023 deer season. And so over the course of 2024, we've been feeling and hearing a fair amount of pressure from different sources as to how, you know, when are we moving on this and how can we make this happen? And we recognized that, you know, utilizing our process that we already have for deer management unit reviews, which we delayed frankly for a year, so we're already a year behind in that process. But the timing is such that if we want to, and we could have the new units in place for this fall for 2025, we need to have that decision, you know, next month in order to do all the processes to facilitate our CDAC meetings and our internal processes to get ready for license sales, you know, this spring, and for the June board meeting when we'll be back with a recommendation for the fall. So that has to be, you know, in place. If it were not to be, that means 2025 is off the table, and potentially, you know, we're working towards, you know, 2026 is the soonest we could implement.
Okay, so I heard a strong push from some individuals to get this thing rolling. I know you have been working hard to have it ready to go for 25. And what you're saying is we're on track for 25. If we make a decision in February, if people want us to slow down and work on this a little bit longer, then the changes won't come into effect until later.
Correct.
Okay, just so that's clear publicly, and maybe that will stimulate some more discussion between now and February. Okay, that's it. Marcy?
Your discussion brought up one more. Are wildlife and forestry staff in the north assigned by county, or do they have multi-county jurisdictions?
That depends on the county.
Okay.
So yeah, it's a question. So some of our biologists have a single county, and some of them have two counties. I don't know that any have three, but they also use counties as their area of jurisdiction for the most part.
Right, and they're the ones that have the CDAC. They conduct the information portion for each CDAC meeting.
Right, both our forestry staff and our wildlife staff function as liaisons on those advisory councils. And even under our old system and the current system, we have some biologists have one meeting and one advisory council to work with, and some have three, you know, just based on how things lay out.
Thank you.
Other questions, comments?
I don't know if it's worth noting that we had the public comment submitted in opposition.
Yeah, there's no decision today, so it's important information, but it'll come to bear whenever we make a decision on this one. One last check, Patty. Any further questions or comments?
Nope, I'm good.
Thank you. Okay, I guess that's it. Jeff, thank you very much. Very informative. Okay, next item on the agenda is item 7, Department Secretaries Matters.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Let's start with 7A, retirement recognition. Number 1, Brian Spengler, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, 38 years. Next, we have Wendy Anderson, Environmental Management, 31 years. Followed by Michael D. Burgum, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, 28 years. Next, we have Jake Chappelle, Environmental Management, 25 years. Followed by Bob Ujic, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, 22 years. And then lastly, Joan Voigt, Fish, Wildlife, and Parks, 16 years. I request a motion to approve these recognitions.
So moved.
I think we got a motion to recognize the retirees from Patty. Do we have a second?
It's really important that we take note of the institutional knowledge they leave with and recognize the amazing contributions each of them must have made over their careers. And I just think it's important to just think about how many organizations have people retiring with that amount of work that they've dedicated their lives to. So it's just very humbling to see these retirements and the amount of years of service that they provide to this agency.
Thank you, Robin. And should I take that as a second?
Yes.
Okay.
Could
So
I,
we've
could
got
I
a-
say one other, can I say one other thing? I added it up, over 150 years of knowledge. That's amazing.
Just this month.
Thank you, Patty. Robin, we've got a motion to recognize and a second. Any further comments from the board? Doug?
Just congratulations to those retiring. Good job. Thanks for the service.
Okay, any more comments? With that, all in favor of recognition, please vote by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed, no. Oh, sorry, Patty. I knew it was going to happen.
Aye.
Motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. 7B, acts of the Department Secretary. Number 1, real estate transactions. Are there any questions on real estate transactions? Hearing none. 7C, Department Secretary's matters. I do not have any for this meeting. I will turn it back over to you, Mr. Secretary, or Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Move on to item 8, board members matters. Item 8A, election of board officers. Now is the time for election of board officers. We have 3 officer positions, the chair, the vice chair, and the secretary. The results of these elections will go into effect upon adjournment of this meeting. So the results of our vote will go into effect almost immediately. We'll start with the chair positions. Nominations are now in order for office of the chair. Any member can make a nomination and no second is required. Doug?
Thanks, Chair. So this has come quick. It seemed like we just did this, but I guess it just shows how fast the years go. So, you know what, to me, important in continuity and experience, I think is key. We're fairly young board in experience, a fairly young board in experience. So continuity to me is always important in everything I've done in regard to these kinds of decisions. And again, the criteria isn't necessary. Any one of us could take that seat, but those are my criterion for that purpose, Chair. I'm gonna make a nomination for chair. I'll nominate Bill Smith.
Well, I have something I need to do here. Marcy, you've got additional load of responsibility for this.
We have a nomination for Mr. Bill Smith. Are there any other nominations? Any other nominations? That's 3. Do we need a second on that nomination?
No.
Okay. All those in favor of
I get a chance to comment if I want.
Mr. Smith, would you accept the nomination?
Well, this election process is an indication of my influence on the other board members because I've long encouraged people to run for these offices and to take their shot. I'm still hopeful that's going to happen soon because a variety of opinions and involvement just makes us stronger as a board and better. I will accept the nomination.
Thank you. Nomination for service for 1 year for Chairman Smith. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Patty will register you as an aye in favor. Hearing none, unanimous consent for Chairman Bill Smith, and I add Doug's comments, steady hand, excellent service to the board. Thank you.
Well,
And
thank you.
congratulations.
I appreciate the support and I will continue to operate in the fashion that I have, try to emphasize involvement of the public and a very receptive, friendly atmosphere and full transparency of our operations. So thank you. With that, we'll move on to the the next election. So we'll now vote on the vice chair position. Nominations are now in order for the office of vice chair. And again, any member can make a nomination. Marcy,
I'd like to nominate Robin Schmidt for the position of vice chair, please.
okay, we have a nomination of Robin Schmidt. And Robin, do you accept the nomination?
Yes, I would. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any other nominations? Are there other nominations for the vice chair position? If not, then nominations are closed. And I'll call a vote for Robin Schmidt's nomination as vice chair. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Robin Schmidt has now been elected as the vice chair of the board. Congratulations, Robin, and welcome to your new duties.
And
soon.
thank you for being a good mentor in the future.
Okay, and our third position on the board is and I want to be very clear on this, it is the Secretary of the Natural Resources Board. So nominations are in order for the office of Secretary of the Board.
It is my pleasure to nominate Patty Schachner as secretary of this NRB.
We have a nomination for Patty Schachner. Patty, do you accept the nomination?
I do, and I'm very humbled. Thank you.
Thank you. There was a bit of a pause there that had us all wondering. Are there any other nominations for secretary? One more call for nominations for secretary. If not, nominations are closed, and we'll bring it to a vote. All those in favor of Patty Schachner as secretary of the board signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, say no. Motion carries. Congratulations, Patty. You're the new secretary of the board. And again, the responsibilities of the re-elected and newly elected board officers will begin upon adjournment of this board meeting. So with
Thank you very
that,
much.
thank you. We'll move on to item 8B, board members matters. And again, we're rotating the alphabetical sequence of this to give everybody an opportunity to be first or some other position. So this month, Deb, you're first. Board members matters.
Oh, boy.
And to keep everybody on their toes.
Exactly. Have you ever called a board member out of order during board members matter? Just question. The reason I bring this up is listening to these conversations about wakeboards, boats has been something that, as I said earlier, comes up to me when I'm back home. And I sometimes think about this as we look at a friend of mine whose husband is a mechanic in Racine, but he also races cars as a hobby. Now, he can't race his cars on Highway 60, and he can't race his cars on I-43. He has to race those cars in specific places. And I know that is a very simplistic analogy, but perhaps when we think about the kinds of boats that we have on our lakes, we might want to consider thinking about that in that way, that maybe there has to be rules. And I totally agree with Patty that this goes back to the legislature's responsibility. And we have some new senators, for example, that may be more science-based and listening to different things differently this time around. But I really think maybe we should look at things from that very simplistic analogy that maybe all things can't happen always everywhere. So that's my little, hopefully I'm in order with that comment.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair.
Patty Schachner, you're next.
I was just wondering, it's been a fast year, 2024 flew by. Do we have any ideas what our summer field trips are going to be looking like this year?
We do not, but just as a matter of fact, Deputy Secretary Stephen Little and I were just talking about that to the side. So we see that as something that we're going to need to talk about before the next board meeting.
Perfect.
we'll get
I'm
working
just
on
real
it.
interested in what's going to happen on this part. Thank you.
All of you be thinking about it too, because I'd really like to get your recommendations on where you see a spot that would be important to have us do an out of Madison board meeting. We're somewhat influenced by where we've been in the recent past, so we're probably not going to go back to the same spot year after year, but we'd like to spread it around geographically and also to use the board tours to highlight important issues for the board and staff and the opportunity to work with our conservation partners in the local communities. So think about it, and if you have something that you think would be good, please get a hold of me. Let me know.
I would like St. Croix County to be considered.
All right, we'll talk about that. Thanks. Any more, Patty?
Nope, stay warm. It's warming up here. You'll be getting it soon.
Oh, good. I'll be heading in the right direction pretty soon. Robin, you're next.
Thank you. I have three things I want to mention. First of all, I want to extend a sincere appreciation to our Deputy Secretary, Stephen Little. I am really humbled at how you are able to do multiple jobs and have for this time since I've really basically been on the board. And you've always been open and welcoming to questions and to helping direct me into the right, navigate me through different issues on who I should be contacting, and have just been really very generous with your time. And I appreciate your the stability you brought to the board during this time without a secretary. So thank you very much. It helped us become as effective as we were in the last year. And I know the new secretary will welcome sitting in that chair, but we will miss you. So thank you. I also want to thank Marcy for serving as vice chair, because as a new board person, it was also great to have both you and Bill to help us figure out what it is we're supposed to be doing in these roles. So thank you for your efforts at that. I also want to comment, and the comment was made during the discussion of chronic wasting disease. The department has an amazing interactive web mapping tool on our website, and I really encourage the public. It's almost any topic you can find interesting information, and it's easy to navigate. And I guess that's the geographer in me who likes to see things visually. It's really, big kudos to all of the IT folks and the program staff who provide that data and make that information accessible to the public. And you go to other state websites and that information is not there. So I think it's really great, that concept of transparency and continuing to be transparent and providing data so that people can look at the numbers behind how different things affect them. So I just wanted to do kudos on the mapping website. And then also, my last comment is to note that it took 4 people to replace Ashley. And that they did amazing work because they are also, double dipping in terms of their jobs. And Ashley, we really welcome you back. You did a good job at training them, so we were in good hands. But congratulations to your new family addition, and we are very pleased to see you back here.
Thank you, Robin. Very well stated. Okay, Marcy West, you're next on our list.
Awesome, thank you. So my first one is, again, not exactly sure where it belongs, but for Mr. Wilcox on the waterfall protection area, if we could just hear back on that of what the process would be or what the options are in that issue. And then secondly, on the wake boat issue for that pilot program of whether any lake would actually need the DNR to be involved to make a pilot program work. if they have a lake association or if they have an ordinance or whatever. I hear Patty and Deb on the legislative front, and I agree with that. But I also want to be sure that we're clear with the folks who have the concerns about what can happen while we wait for overriding legislation. Because we have had testimony before where ordinances are working and other education and information items are working. So I don't want to lose track of that. I want to keep the pressure on because yes, we hear the frustration, we share the frustration, and hopefully we can do something for the protection of recreation and the environment on those. One shout out, if you're interested, the Lakes and Rivers Conference in the spring, the registration is open for that. So a simple Google search will put that out, or we can send it out. And with that, that's enough for this month, and we'll see you in February.
Thank you, Marcy. Rachel?
I guess my thoughts were I just want to thank all the presenters again for sharing their knowledge and information. It's each one of these meetings, I feel like I learned so much about things I didn't even have any idea about. So also wanted to thank Deputy Secretary Little. It's been a pleasure getting to know you and being onboarded onto the board, and thank you. And I don't know what you'll do with your free time now.
He's not retired.
I know. Also wanted to thank all the citizens for contributing to the public comment during this meeting, as well as through our liaison. I think all those public comments are really interesting and valuable to help shape our perspectives and opinions. So just continue to encourage people to reach out and share their thoughts and their experiences. And then I was just found on the DNR website this weekend, the ecological site history, was reading about some of the glaciation throughout the state. And so didn't even realize that that was there. So again, exploring the DNR website will now be on my list to do in my free time. And thank you to all the board members and Chair Smith too.
Thanks, Rachel. Doug?
Thanks, Chair. So similar, first just want to congratulate the new secretary, Karen Yond, coming on. Look forward to interacting, and I assume we'll see her at the next meeting, but right now, congratulations to her and looking forward. And then again, thanks, Stephen, for stepping in. It's, from what I've read, the longest vacant secretary seat in about 50 years. So you did wonders standing in. Stuff I interacted with you on were exceptional. So
Thank you.
The other thing is the things we keep talking about that keeps coming back around. Obviously, wakeboarding. You know, I agree with the comments that were made by other board members, but maybe it's time for us to take a deeper dive into that as a board and see what kind of discussions come about it. There's 3 others that I have on my list too that I'm adding to it. Lead ammo, you know, nothing this month, but we've heard that in the past too, without, from my standpoint at least, without a lot of I don't want to say solutions, a lot of what are we doing for action on them things. PFAS, maybe. I know how much we're doing there though, and it's been exceptional response, really warranted. And the other one, CWD, you know, just continues. And I've made this comment before, is under board member matters and the concerns about farms and their regulation or lack thereof that I think we need to dive into. The one adjacent to Menominee, last count, 740 positives in that farm and still operating. And now the result is one of the newer counties with the positive detections, Menominee Reservation. So here we are. We've had about 3-hour discussions with our membership about 2 weeks ago, and a lot of questions still remaining from them about what are we supposed to do now. And you know, this probably isn't new to the public when this happens in their counties. But I think from our standpoint on the board, it warrants us to start talking about it more actively, and these things, maybe they require a special meeting, I don't know. But they keep coming up and we keep circling them around, so. Yeah, thanks.
Thank you, Doug. And I have just a couple of comments. Again, I appreciate the support from the board, and will do my best to continue in the direction we're headed here. Obviously, Doug, you're looking ahead and have your list of topics, and I was going to just give each of the board members a heads up that I'll be giving you a call and just talking over with you what your priorities are, what things you'd like to see us working on, both from an informational standpoint and also from maybe a deeper dive as Doug describes. And I have one item that is a more specific one. It's not anything that I'm suggesting for a presentation at the board in the public arena, but I would like to get some more information on this issue of gray fences, it's called. And it has to do with operations that appear to be either unknowingly or intentionally erecting high fences that would prevent the open movement of deer back and forth over the fence, and then leaving it open for periods of time and then closing it, and appearing that there are wild deer trapped within this fence, and then maybe hunting them or not. There've been some articles in the press, and Stephen, I would like to be able to talk to whoever we've got on staff that would be the closest to that issue and could just talk a little bit about their perspectives on it and what might be possible in the future.
Absolutely.
We call it the gray fences. Thank you. With that, I think it's time to request a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Darcy moves adjournment. Is there a second?
Second.
Rachel seconds. Any comments? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Thank you, Patty. Opposed,
See you
say
next
no.
month.
Motion carries, we're adjourned.
Congratulations, Bill.
Oh my gosh, Rachel, I got to go there last spring when the girls were dancing.